I'll never forget the sound of metal crunching against concrete, or how the windshield exploded into 1,000 tiny daggers that rained down on me. But what haunts me most isn't the pain from the glass embedded in my skin or my trapped leg twisted beneath the dashboard. It's my mother's voice cutting through my screams. Madison's yoga class starts in 6 minutes. While blood pooled beneath me, my family stepped over my broken body like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. The morning had started so differently from how it ended. Sunshine streamed through my apartment windows as I prepared for what should have been a perfect day. Madison's 25th birthday celebration at the Riverside Inn was supposed to be the culmination of weeks of secret planning. I'd coordinated with 12 of her college friends, arranged for her favorite red velvet cake, and even convinced the restaurant to prepare a special vegan menu just for her dietary preferences. My phone buzzed at 7:30 sharp. "Don't forget to pick us up by 8:15, my mother's text read. Madison has her hot yoga class at noon and she absolutely cannot miss it. It's the advanced certification session. I arrived at my parents' colonial house in Westfield exactly on time, pulling into their circular driveway with my recently cleaned Honda Accord. The October air was crisp but warm, perfect for the outdoor seating I'd reserved at the restaurant. My father emerged first, checking his Rolex and adjusting his golf polo. He'd clearly planned to hit the country club after brunch. "Morning, Dad." I called out cheerfully, stepping out to help with anything they might need to load. He barely glanced my way. "Is the car clean? You know how Madison feels about riding in messy vehicles." Before I could respond that I'd just had it detailed specifically for today, Madison appeared in the doorway. Even for a casual birthday brunch, she looked like she'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled in beachy waves, and she wore designer workout clothes that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "Lorraine, please tell me you're not wearing that," she said, eyeing my simple sundress with distaste. "This is my birthday brunch, not a church picnic." I forced a smile, reminding myself that today was her day. "Happy birthday, Madison. You look great." My mother followed close behind, carrying Madison's yoga bag purse and what appeared to be a change of clothes. "Let's move quickly, everyone. The schedule is tight. Brunch at 9 shopping until 11:30. Then Madison needs to be at Pure Bliss Yoga by 11:50 at the latest." We loaded into my car, my parents taking the back seat while Madison claimed the passenger side. She immediately began adjusting everything, the mirror, the air vents, even reaching over to change my radio station. "Could you drive a bit faster, Lorraine?" she said 5 minutes into our journey. "I really can't be late to this certification. There's a waiting list a mile long for these sessions." I maintained the speed limit as we merged onto Highway 4, the main artery connecting Westfield to downtown, where the restaurant waited. Traffic was lighter than usual for a Saturday morning, and I felt confident we'd make all our scheduled stops with time to spare. Madison pulled out her phone and started recording herself. "Good morning, beautiful souls," she spoke to her front camera. "It's my birthday and I'm about to have the most amazing day. Brunch with family, then my level 3 hot yoga certification. Living my best life." "Madison, honey, make sure you mention the spiritual retreat you're planning," my mother suggested from the back seat. "Your followers love hearing about your wellness journey." I focused on the road while Madison chattered about chakras and manifestation. We were approaching the intersection of Highway 4 and Madison Avenue, coincidentally named like my sister, though she liked to tell people it was named after her. The light was green traffic flowing smoothly. "Oh my God," Madison suddenly screeched, pointing to our right. "There's Pure Bliss Yoga. We're passing right by it. Lorraine, why didn't you take Route 12? We could have dropped me off first and then gone to brunch." "Because the reservation is in 30 minutes, I explained patiently. "We planned this weeks ago. Remember, all your friends are meeting us there." "My certification is more important than some stupid brunch," she snapped, and before I could process what was happening, she reached across the center console and grabbed the steering wheel. "Madison, no." I shouted, fighting to maintain control as she tried to force the car toward the exit ramp. The world exploded into chaos. A delivery truck running the red light at full speed slammed into the driver's side of my car. The impact sent us spinning across the intersection like a toy thrown by an angry child. Metal screamed against metal glass, shattered in a deadly cascade, and then came the final sickening crunch as we collided with the concrete median. Everything went silent except for the ringing in my ears. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly. My left leg was twisted at an impossible angle, pinned beneath the crumpled dashboard. Warm liquid ran down my face into my eyes, tasting of copper when it reached my lips. The windshield had become a spider web of destruction, pieces of it, decorating my skin like deadly diamonds. Through the haze of shock and pain, I heard car doors opening. Not mine, that was crushed beyond recognition, but the rear doors. My family was climbing out, their voices carrying through the broken windows. "Madison, sweetheart, are you hurt?" My mother's voice high with panic. "My hand," Madison whined. "I think I scratched it on something." I tried to speak to call for help, but only a wet gurgle emerged. Blood was pooling in my mouth, making it hard to form words. Through my one good eye, the one not covered in blood, I watched my father walk around to assess the damage to his car. "This is a disaster," he muttered. "Do you know how much body work costs on a Mercedes?" "Mom," I finally managed to croak out, "please help." She appeared at my shattered window, then taking in the sight of me trapped and bleeding. For a moment, I thought I saw concern flash across her face. Then she glanced at her watch. "Her class starts in 6 minutes," she yelled to my father. "Madison can't miss this certification." "Dad," I whispered, reaching a bloody hand toward the window. "Please, I can't move. My leg." He looked at me with the same expression he used when reviewing disappointing quarterly reports. Cold, calculating, slightly annoyed. "She can crawl out. Madison needs medical attention for her hand." "I think I'm dying," I said, though the words came out slurred and broken. Madison appeared, then stepping carefully around the debris in her pristine Lululemon outfit. She looked at me, trapped in the wreckage, bleeding and broken, and actually rolled her eyes. "This is so typical of you, Lorraine. Everything always has to be about you." She stepped over a puddle of my blood to retrieve her yoga bag from the back seat. "Now I'm going to be late and lose my spot in the class." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. I watched through fading vision as my family huddled together on the roadside, Madison dramatically cradling her barely scraped hand while my parents fussed over her. None of them looked back at the twisted metal prison where I lay dying. The EMTs arrived in a rush of red lights and professional efficiency. I heard them asking my family about injuries, heard my father's response that would haunt me forever. "My daughter Madison has an injured hand. She needs immediate attention." He paused, then added the words that changed everything. "The driver," she was texting, probably reading birthday messages when she should have been watching the road. "These millennials and their phones, you know." "That's not true," I tried to say, but darkness was creeping in from the edges. The last thing I heard before unconsciousness claimed me was my mother's voice, clear and callous. "Make sure Madison gets to her yoga certification. It's more important than you know." As the EMTs began cutting away the metal that trapped me, I realized the crash wasn't the worst thing that happened that morning. The worst thing was discovering that to my family, I wasn't worth saving if it meant Madison might be 6 minutes late to yoga. But they had no idea what their abandonment would cost them. They had no idea what evidence would surface, what allies would emerge, or how their golden child's web of lies would ultimately entangle them all. They left me bleeding in shattered glass, stepped over my broken body for a yoga class, and sealed their own fate with every cruel word they spoke while I lay dying. The world came back to me in fragments. First the sound of power tools screaming against metal, then voices urgent and professional calling out medical terminology I couldn't quite grasp. Pain rolled through me in waves, each breath a monumental effort that sent fire through my chest. "We need to stabilize her before extraction," a male voice said somewhere above me. Possible internal bleeding, definite head trauma, left leg is pinned. I forced my eyes open, blinking away blood and tears. Through the spider web of the shattered windshield, I could see a crowd had gathered. Onlookers with their phones out recording my tragedy for their social media feeds. But my family stood apart from them, clustered around Madison like she was the one who'd been crushed in twisted metal. "Excuse me, ma'am." A female EMT appeared at the passenger window addressing my mother. "We need to know about the driver's medical history. Any conditions we should be aware of." My mother didn't even glance in my direction. "Madison needs attention first. Look at her hand, it's definitely injured." The EMT looked confused. "Ma'am, the driver is critically injured. We need to prioritize." My daughter Madison was traumatized by this accident. My father interrupted his voice, carrying that authoritative tone he used in board meetings. "She requires immediate transport to Westfield General. We have connections there. Dr. Richardson is expecting her." Madison held up her hand, which bore nothing more than a tiny red mark, possibly a small scratch. "It really hurts," she whimpered. "I think I need x-rays. What if it affects my yoga practice?" I watched this surreal scene unfold while firefighters worked to peel away my car door like a tin can. Every vibration sent agony through my trapped leg. Blood continued to drip steadily from somewhere on my head, creating a growing puddle that had already soaked through my dress. "Please," I managed to whisper to the firefighter closest to me. "My family—" He squeezed my shoulder gently. "Don't try to talk, miss. Save your energy. We're going to get you out." But I needed them to know, needed someone to hear the truth. My sister grabbed the wheel. The firefighter's eyes widened slightly, but before he could respond, my mother's voice cut through everything else. "She has a history, you know," she was telling the EMT supervisor who'd just arrived. "Lorraine has always been prone to attention-seeking behavior. Drama follows her everywhere." "Mom," I called out weakly, disbelief cutting through my pain. She continued as if she hadn't heard me. "Ever since Madison started excelling, really making something of herself, Lorraine has had these episodes. Manufactured crises to pull focus back to herself." The EMT supervisor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, glanced between my mother and where I lay trapped. "Ma'am, regardless of any history, your daughter has severe injuries that need immediate treatment." "Alleged injuries," my father corrected. "Lorraine has been known to exaggerate. There was that time in high school when she claimed to have broken her ankle to get out of her sister's dance recital. The x-rays showed nothing." I remembered that incident differently. I'd twisted my ankle badly in gym class, but the school nurse, a friend of my mother's, had declared it merely bruised without ordering x-rays. I'd limped for weeks while being accused of faking. "Can someone please check on Madison?" My sister interjected, her voice pitched high with fake distress. "I think I'm going into shock. My hand is starting to feel numb." Two EMTs immediately rushed to her, leaving their colleagues to continue working on my extraction. I watched them examine her barely visible scratch with professional seriousness while I bled out 20 feet away. "How much longer for the extraction?" the EMT supervisor asked the fire chief. "Another 10 minutes, maybe 15. The door's crushed pretty bad." "I can't wait 15 minutes, Madison announced. "My yoga certification starts soon. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." "Sweetheart, your health comes first." My mother cooed, though she was already gathering Madison's belongings. "But perhaps they could transport you now and work on Lorraine after she seems stable enough." Stable. I could feel my consciousness wavering, darkness creeping in at the edges of my vision again. My trapped leg had gone from agonizing to eerily numb. The puddle of blood beneath me continued to grow. "That's not how emergency response works," the EMT supervisor said firmly. "We treat the most critical injuries first." My father stepped forward, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling Bill Richardson now. He's the head of emergency services at Westfield General. I'm sure he can clarify proper procedures for you." While he made his call, I watched the first ambulance arrive. Standard protocol would have been to prepare it for me the most seriously injured. Instead, I witnessed my family orchestrating Madison's grand exit. "I need a neck brace," Madison declared. "My neck feels weird. What if I have whiplash?" They actually put her in a neck brace. This girl who'd been walking around talking on her phone posing for concerned onlookers was now being treated like a trauma patient, while I couldn't feel my left leg anymore. Lorraine always was jealous. I heard my mother telling a police officer who'd started taking statements. "Madison gets all the opportunities you see. The yoga certification law school next year, she's even been scouted by a modeling agency. It must be hard for Lorraine working her little office job while Madison shines." My little office job, I was a financial analyst at a Fortune 500 company. I'd graduated summa cum laude and was on track for a promotion to senior analyst. But in my family's narrative, I was the failure because I didn't post inspirational quotes on Instagram or have 20,000 followers. "We're ready to cut," the firefighter announced. "Miss, this is going to be loud and might hurt. Just hold on." The saw screamed to life, metal shrieking against metal. Each vibration sent fresh waves of agony through me. I bit down on my lip to keep from crying out, tasting more blood. "Did you see how she swerved?" My father was now telling his version to the police. "Classic distracted driving, always on that phone of hers. I've warned her hundreds of times." "Dad," I tried to call out between the saw's screams. "Please." He glanced at me then, and for a moment I thought I saw something human in his eyes. Then his phone rang and he turned away to answer it. "Bill, yes. We need Madison seen immediately. Possible concussion, hand injury, psychological trauma. What no Lorraine can wait. You know how she exaggerates." They loaded Madison into the first ambulance while the firefighters were still cutting me free. I watched my family climb in with her, my mother holding Madison's uninjured hand, my father barking orders at the EMTs about which hospital to use. "Wait," I whispered to the EMT who was monitoring my vitals. "My family, they're leaving." She looked uncomfortable. "They said they'd meet you at the hospital later. Your sister needs immediate attention." "She grabbed the wheel," I said, using all my remaining energy to speak clearly. "Madison grabbed the wheel because we were passing her yoga studio. That's what caused—" The EMT's expression changed, but before she could respond, the firefighter announced, "We're through. Let's get her out carefully. Watch the leg." They moved me inch by agonizing inch, every shift sending lightning through my body. When they finally got me onto the backboard, I caught sight of my left leg and immediately wished I hadn't. The angle was wrong, grotesquely wrong, and bone showed through torn skin. "Priority transport," the EMT supervisor ordered. "Trauma team needs to be ready when we arrive." As they loaded me into the second ambulance, I heard one of the police officers asking about family contacts. "Her family just left in the first ambulance," another officer explained. "Said they'd handle insurance and paperwork from the hospital. They left." The first officer sounded surprised. "Their daughter's in critical condition and they left?" Apparently the other daughter had injuries too, scratch on her hand. Even through my pain and fading consciousness, I heard the skepticism in his voice. But it didn't matter. My family had made their choice. They'd abandoned me bleeding and broken for a yoga class. As the ambulance doors closed and we started racing toward the hospital, I stared up at the ceiling and made myself a promise. They thought I was just dramatic Lorraine, the attention-seeking sister who couldn't let Madison shine. They had no idea what they'd just set in motion. The EMT adjusted my oxygen mask and checked my vitals again. "You're going to be okay," she said softly. "Just hold on." I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wasn't going to be okay. Not because of my injuries, though those were severe enough, but because in that moment, trapped in twisted metal, while my family stepped over my blood to rush Madison to her yoga class, something inside me had shattered more completely than any windshield. They'd finally shown me exactly where I stood in their priorities. Bleeding out on concrete ranked somewhere below hot yoga certification. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have imagined as they rode away in that first ambulance, was that their cruelty had been witnessed. Their lies had been heard, And sometimes the child you leave bleeding in shattered glass is the one who inherits the strength to bring your house of cards crashing down. The sirens wailed as we flew through the streets toward Westfield General, toward surgery and pain and a long recovery, but also toward something else, something my family couldn't see coming. Truth has a way of surfacing just like blood through shattered glass, and I was done being the family member who quietly bled while Madison basked in the spotlight. They'd left me for dead over a yoga class. They just didn't know yet what that choice would cost them. The trauma bay at Westfield General exploded into controlled chaos the moment they wheeled me in. Doctors and nurses surrounded my gurney voices, calling out medical terms that blurred together in my pain-addled mind. Someone cut away what remained of my blood-soaked dress, while others attached monitors and started IV lines. 28-year-old female motor vehicle accident with prolonged extraction. The EMT rattled off. Significant blood loss, compound fracture of the left tibia and fibula, possible internal bleeding, head laceration, requiring sutures. She's been in and out of consciousness. Dr. Sarah Chen, according to her badge, leaned over me with a penlight. "Can you tell me your name?" "Lorraine." I managed through the oxygen mask. "Lorraine Maxwell." "Good. Lorraine, we're going to take excellent care of you, but I need to ask, where's your family? We need consent forms for surgery." "They're here," I whispered, "with my sister." She had a scratch. Dr. Chen's brow furrowed, but she maintained her professional demeanor. "We'll sort that out. Right now, let's focus on you." As they prepared to rush me to surgery, I heard a familiar voice echoing from somewhere down the hallway. My mother's shrill demands carried even through the emergency department's usual cacophony. "She needs the VIP suite. We're platinum donors to this hospital. The Madison wing and the cardiac unit is named after my daughter." That was a lie. The Madison wing was named after Madison Petroleum Company, a local business that had donated millions. But my family had attended the dedication ceremony, and my mother had been telling people ever since that it was named for my sister. "Ma'am, your daughter's injury doesn't require the VIP suite," a nurse was explaining patiently. "It's a minor laceration that needs basic cleaning and perhaps a bandage." Minor, my baby was in a horrific car accident. She could have internal injuries, hidden trauma. I demand she receive full-body imaging immediately. Through my haze of pain medication, I watched them wheel me past the room where my family had congregated. Madison sat on an examination table, still in her spotless workout clothes, taking selfies with her injured hand, while my parents berated the medical staff. "Is that Dr. Richardson?" My father spotted a man in a white coat. "Bill, thank God you're here. Madison needs your personal attention." Dr. Richardson, whom I recognized from my parents' country club photos, immediately changed course toward Madison's room. "Of course, let me take a look at our special patient." "Surgery now," Dr. Chen ordered my transport team. "We can't wait any longer." As they rushed me toward the elevator, I caught one last glimpse of my family. Not one of them looked up. Not one of them asked about the girl who'd been pulled from the wreckage covered in glass and blood. The next few hours passed in a blur of preoperative preparations and anesthesia. Just before they put me under, a nurse asked again about family consent. "They're with my sister." I repeated the words, bitter on my tongue. "I can sign for myself." "Honey, are you sure someone shouldn't be here with you?" I thought about lying there alone, about to undergo major surgery, while my family fussed over Madison's scratch 3 floors below. I'm sure. I've always been alone. When I woke up hours later, the first thing I noticed was the pain different now, managed but persistent. The second thing I noticed was the sound of my father's voice through the thin curtain separating my recovery bay from the next. "The insurance forms are complicated," he was saying. "But it's clear Lorraine was at fault. Distracted driving. We all saw her looking at her phone." "That's not true," I tried to say, but my throat was raw from intubation. "Multiple witnesses," my mother added, including Madison, who was recording a video at the time, though the trauma of the accident corrupted the file, unfortunately. "How convenient," Madison's video that would have shown her grabbing the wheel had mysteriously disappeared. A different nurse appeared at my bedside, checking my vitals. "Oh, good, you're awake. Surgery went well. Dr. Chen repaired the compound fracture with plates and screws. You also had a small liver laceration that we managed laparoscopically. You're lucky to be alive." "My family," I croaked. Her expression tightened. "They're handling administrative matters. I'll let them know you're awake." She disappeared through the curtain, and I heard my father's dismissive response. "We'll see her when we're finished here. These insurance forms won't complete themselves." 20 minutes passed. 30. An hour. The space beside my bed remained empty while I listened to my parents discuss protecting Madison's future law school applications from any association with the accident. "We should have her evaluated," my mother suggested. "Psychological trauma from surviving such an ordeal. It would explain any inconsistencies in her statement." They were building Madison's victim narrative while I lay here with metal holding my bones together. Dr. Richardson's voice joined the conversation. "I've arranged for Madison to have the full body scan in our premium imaging suite. No wait time. We'll be thorough." "What about Lorraine's surgery?" my mother asked, and for a moment I felt a spark of hope. "Oh, that's already complete. Routine trauma surgery. She'll be fine. But Madison's peace of mind is what's important now. Hidden injuries can manifest later, especially psychological ones. We should document everything." I pressed the call button, desperate for water, for pain medication, for anyone to acknowledge I existed. The nurse who responded looked harried. "I'm sorry, honey, we're short-staffed. There's been a delay with your post-operative care orders." "A delay?" She looked uncomfortable. "Your family requested your surgeon consult with Dr. Richardson before proceeding. Something about wanting a second opinion on your treatment plan. But Dr. Richardson is currently occupied with another patient." With Madison, they were delaying my post-operative care so Madison could have her unnecessary full-body scan. "Can I have some water, at least?" "Of course, I'll be right back." She returned with ice chips and a worried expression. "Your surgeon is not happy about the delay. Dr. Chen wants to check your incision sites and ensure there's no internal bleeding, but my parents are platinum donors. I finished for her." She didn't deny it. "I'm going to page Dr. Chen again. This is medical malpractice if we delay necessary post-operative care." While she was gone, I heard Madison's voice from the hallway. "Mom, this is taking forever. Can we at least stop by the yoga studio so I can explain why I missed the certification? Maybe they'll make an exception." "Of course, sweetheart. Your father can handle things here." They were leaving. Again, Madison's yoga class still took priority over everything else. Dr. Chen appeared at my bedside looking furious. "I don't care who your parents donate to," she said, not bothering to lower her voice. "You're my patient and you need immediate post-operative assessment. Nurse, prep her for examination." As Dr. Chen checked my incisions and reviewed my vitals, she spoke quietly. "Your nurse mentioned you said something about your sister grabbing the wheel. Do you remember the accident?" I met her eyes, seeing genuine concern there. "I remember everything." She nodded slowly. "The police will want a statement when you're feeling up to it. And Lorraine. You might want to have someone else here when they come. Someone who's actually on your side." "I don't have anyone," I admitted. "That's not true," she said firmly. "You have a medical team that's documented everything we've witnessed today. The delays in your care, the family dynamics, the inconsistencies in their stories. We're mandated reporters, you know." A small hope flickered in my chest. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Focus on healing. But when you're ready, there are people here who will support you telling the truth." My father appeared in the doorway, then looking annoyed. "Lorraine, you're awake. Good. We need you to sign these insurance forms. Initial here, here, and here where it indicates driver fault." Dr. Chen stepped between us. "Mr. Maxwell, your daughter is 8 hours post-operative. She's under the influence of pain medication and in no condition to sign legal documents." "She's lucid enough," he argued. "Time is of the essence with these claims." "And your daughter's recovery is of the essence to me," Dr. Chen shot back. She signs nothing until she's been off narcotic pain medication for at least 24 hours and has had time to review everything with a clear head. My father's face reddened. Do you know who I am? How much my family contributes to this hospital? I know exactly who you are, Dr. Chen replied calmly. You're the father who left his critically injured daughter at an accident scene to take her sister for treatment of a minor scratch. You're the man who's been telling anyone who'll listen that his daughter was texting while driving despite having no evidence. And you're currently attempting to coerce a patient into signing legal documents while she's recovering from major surgery. Would you like me to continue? The silence was deafening. My father turned on his heel and stalked out without another word. Dr. Chen turned back to me with a small smile. Get some rest. Real healing starts with feeling safe, and I promise you, in my trauma unit, you are safe. As she left, I lay back against the pillows and let the tears finally come. Not from pain, though that was constant. Not from fear of what recovery would bring, but from the simple kindness of a stranger who saw through my family's facade and chose to stand up for me. They thought they could rewrite the narrative, turn me into the villain while Madison played the victim. They had no idea that while they were chasing yoga certifications and managing their image, the truth was being carefully documented by professionals who took their ethics seriously. Madison got her full body scan that day, results completely clear as expected. I got a blood transfusion to replace what I'd lost, while they decided my sister's yoga class was more important than my life. But I also got something else, something my family couldn't buy with their donations or influence with their connections. I got witnesses. Professional, credible witnesses who saw exactly who my family really was, and that more than any surgery was the first step toward healing. 3 days into my hospital stay, I woke to find my parents sitting beside my bed. Not out of concern, I realized immediately, but because they'd brought paperwork. Thick stacks of forms spread across my bedside table, their laser-focused expressions revealing their true purpose for this visit. Finally awake. My mother said, not asking how I felt or if I was in pain. We need to handle this insurance situation immediately. The claims adjuster has been calling non-stop. I blinked slowly, still foggy from the pain medication they'd administered after my morning physical therapy session. My leg throbbed in its cast, and the surgical sites pulled with every breath. What insurance situation? My father slid a form toward me, his Mont Blanc pen ready. Standard accident report? Just sign where we've marked. We've already filled in the details to save you the trouble. Something in his eagerness made me hesitate. I reached for the papers, my bandaged hand shaking slightly. The words swam before my eyes, but certain phrases jumped out. Sole driver responsibility, distracted driving, failure to maintain control of vehicle. This as I was texting, I said slowly, my voice hoarse. Well, you were on your phone. Madison chimed in from where she lounged in the visitor's chair, scrolling through her own device. I mean, you're always on that thing. I wasn't texting. My phone was in my purse. The memory was crystal clear, despite the trauma. Madison, you grabbed the wheel. You know that. My sister's face contorted into an expression of wounded innocence. How can you say that I'm the victim here, too? Do you know how many yoga certifications I've missed because of my trauma? I can't even do a proper downward dog without flashbacks. Just sign the papers, Lorraine, my father said impatiently. The insurance company needs a clear narrative. This protects everyone. Protects everyone from what? I pushed the papers aside, though the movement sent pain shooting through my ribs. From liability complications, my mother said, as if speaking to a particularly slow child. If there's any question about the cause of the accident, it could delay payouts, affect our premiums, even impact Madison's law school applications. Is that what you want? A knock on the door interrupted us. Linda Wheeler, the hospital social worker, entered with a bright smile that dimmed when she saw my family. Oh, I didn't realize you had visitors, Lorraine. I can come back. No, please stay. I said quickly, something about her presence making me feel safer. We're handling family business, my father said dismissively. Privacy would be appreciated. Linda's smile remained, but her eyes sharpened. Of course. Though I should mention that hospital policy requires a medical professional present when patients sign legal documents while under narcotic pain management. It's for everyone's protection. She's coherent, my mother argued. I'm sure she is, but she did receive morphine 45 minutes ago. Policy is policy. Linda positioned herself where she could see the papers. What kind of documents are these? Insurance forms, my father said curtly. Routine accident reports. Ah, Linda's tone remained pleasant. How thoughtful of you to help Lorraine with the paperwork, though typically insurance companies prefer to take statements directly from all involved parties separately. Reduces complications later. I watched my parents exchange glances. They hadn't expected interference. We're just trying to expedite things, my mother said. Lorraine needs to focus on healing, not bureaucracy. Of course. Lorraine, are you feeling up to reviewing legal documents right now? You seem a bit drowsy. I seized the lifeline she offered. Actually, I am pretty foggy. Maybe we should wait until I'm off the pain medication. Nonsense, my father said sharply. These need to be submitted today. Just sign them, Lorraine. Stop being difficult. Mr. Maxwell, Linda said, her professional smile never wavering. I'm sure you understand that documents signed under the influence of narcotics could be challenged later. It's in everyone's best interest to wait until Lorraine can review everything with a clear head. Madison huffed dramatically. This is ridiculous. She just needs to tell the truth about her texting so we can all move on. I have a therapy appointment for my PTSD in an hour. Your PTSD, I couldn't help but ask. From your scratch? From nearly dying? Madison's voice rose to a pitch that made my head throb. You have no idea what I've been through. Dr. Richardson says I may never fully recover from the psychological trauma. Speaking of Dr. Richardson, Linda said smoothly, he's been quite attentive to your case, Madison. The entire VIP wing staff has mentioned how thoroughly he's documented your injuries. My mother preened. He's been wonderful, so understanding of what Madison's going through. Yes, his notes are very detailed, Linda agreed. Particularly interesting how he describes the scratch on Madison's hand as, quote, barely visible to the naked eye but potentially psychologically significant. Medical documentation is so important, isn't it? The temperature in the room seemed to drop. My parents suddenly looked less certain. What are you implying? My father demanded. Oh, nothing at all. Just that thorough documentation protects everyone. Just like these insurance forms, I'm sure. She glanced at the papers again. Though I do notice these seem to be pre-filled. How efficient. When did you have time to write Lorraine's statement for her? We didn't write anything for her, my mother said quickly. We're just helping with the basic facts. The basic facts being that Lorraine was texting and caused the accident. Linda's tone remained light conversational. Even though the police report indicates they haven't made a fault determination yet, I realized what Linda was doing. She was documenting this conversation, creating a record of my parents' attempt to coerce me into a false confession. You know what, I think I need to rest, I said, playing up my exhaustion. Can we do this later, when I'm thinking more clearly? This can't wait, my father insisted. He leaned forward, his cologne making my stomach turn. Sign the papers, Lorraine. Now. Mr. Maxwell, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice, Linda said firmly. This is a hospital and your daughter is recovering from major surgery. Stay out of this, he snapped. You have no idea what's at stake here. What is at stake, Dad? I asked, genuinely curious now. Why is it so important that I sign these today? My parents exchanged another look and my mother took over. The insurance company contacted us about a preliminary settlement offer, but it's contingent on having a clear accident report. If we miss this window, it could take months or even years to resolve. A settlement offer. I tried to process this through my medication fog. For my medical bills, for everything, my father said. Medical bills, pain and suffering, vehicle replacement. It's substantial. How substantial? That's not important right now, my mother said quickly. What matters is securing it before they change their minds. But I saw Madison's eyes light up, saw the way she straightened in her chair. Whatever the amount was, it was enough to catch her attention. I want to see the offer, I said. You don't need to worry about that, my father said. We'll handle the financial aspects. You just need to sign. Actually, Linda interjected, Lorraine has every right to review any settlement offers related to her injuries. In fact, it would be illegal to settle her claim without her full knowledge and consent. My father's face flushed red. Are you a lawyer now? No, but I work with them regularly. Patient advocacy is part of my job. She turned to me. Lorraine, would you like me to contact the hospital's legal aid office? They offer free consultations for accident victims. That won't be necessary, my mother said sharply. We have family lawyers. Your lawyers, you mean? I said, understanding dawning. Lawyers who work for you, not me. Don't be paranoid, Lorraine, Madison said. We're all family. What's good for one is good for all. Like my yoga certification, she added under her breath, but I heard it. The pieces were falling into place. They needed me to admit fault to secure a settlement that they controlled. But why? What weren't they telling me? I'm not signing anything today, I said firmly. I want to see all the documentation, the police report, the insurance offer, everything. And I want my own lawyer to review it. Your own lawyer. My mother laughed, but it sounded forced. How dramatic. Next you'll be saying you don't trust your own family. I looked at them, then really looked. My parents, who'd left me bleeding in glass, my sister, who'd caused the accident and then played victim, the family who'd prioritized a yoga class over my life. I need to rest, I repeated. Please leave. Lorraine. My father's voice held a warning. Think very carefully about what you're doing. Your health insurance is through my company. Your apartment lease has my name as guarantor. Your car loan... Are you threatening me? I asked quietly. Linda stepped forward. Mr. Maxwell, I think it's time for you to go. Lorraine needs to rest, and she's made her wishes clear. This isn't over, he said, gathering the unsigned papers. You have no idea what you're risking with this stubbornness. They filed out Madison, pausing at the door. I really was traumatized, you know. Just because my injuries weren't as visible doesn't mean I wasn't hurt. After they left, Linda sat beside my bed. Are you okay? I don't know, I admitted. What just happened? Your family tried to get you to sign a false statement while you were medicated and vulnerable, she said bluntly. I've seen it before, unfortunately. Family members trying to control insurance payouts, especially when the victim is incapacitated. They mentioned a settlement offer. Linda nodded, which they didn't want you to know the details of. Lorraine, I strongly recommend you get your own legal representation. Today, if possible. But I can't afford... There are lawyers who work on contingency for cases like this. I can give you some referrals. But first we need to make sure you're safe. Those threats your father made... He meant them... I said, feeling the weight of reality settling on my shoulders. They'll cut me off completely if I don't cooperate. Then we need to prepare for that possibility. But right now, focus on healing. And whatever you do, don't sign anything without your own lawyer present. As Linda left to get those referrals, I lay back and closed my eyes. The insurance betrayal was just beginning, I realized. My family had plans for that settlement, money plans that didn't include the person who'd actually been injured. They thought I was weak, drugged alone. They thought they could pressure me into taking the fall while they cashed in on my pain. But they'd made a crucial mistake. They'd shown their hand too early, and now I knew exactly what kind of game we were playing. The hospital discharged me after a week, though discharged felt like too gentle a word for what actually happened. My parents arrived with tight smiles and paperwork, efficiently managing my transfer as if handling a business transaction, rather than bringing their injured daughter home. We've set up the basement guest room for you, my mother announced as they wheeled me to their Mercedes. It'll be easier than trying to navigate stairs with your cast. I should have known then what easier really meant. The ride home was silent except for Madison's constant texting. She sat in the front seat, periodically sighing dramatically and rubbing her supposedly injured hand. Every few minutes she'd mutter something about her delayed yoga certification or the trauma support group she'd joined. "I'm speaking at the survivors' meeting tomorrow," she announced as we pulled into the driveway. "Dr. Richardson thinks sharing my story will help others." "What story?" I asked from the back seat, my leg propped awkwardly across the leather seats. "My journey through trauma," she said, as if it should be obvious. "How I'm overcoming the psychological scars from the accident. Jessica from the Wellness Center wants to feature me in their newsletter." I bit my tongue, tasting bitterness along with the metallic residue of pain medication. My sister was building a brand around trauma she hadn't experienced while I sat here, with metal pins holding my bones together. My father parked in the garage and reality hit me like another collision. I was on crutches with a full leg cast, multiple surgical sites, still healing and limited mobility. The basement guest room was accessed by a narrow staircase with 14 steep steps. "How am I supposed to get down there?" I asked, staring at the stairs that might as well have been Mount Everest. "Carefully," my mother said, already heading upstairs. "Madison's friends are coming over to plan her welcome back celebration. We need to prepare refreshments." Her welcome back celebration. "To yoga class." Madison clarified as if I was being deliberately obtuse. "Everyone's been so worried about me. They want to show their support." I stood at the top of the basement stairs, balanced precariously on my crutches. My father had already disappeared into his study, my mother was clattering around in the kitchen, and Madison had floated off to her room to prepare for her party. "One step at a time," I muttered, beginning the dangerous descent. By the 4th step, sweat beaded on my forehead. By the 8th, my arms shook from supporting my full weight on the crutches. On the 12th step, my crutch caught on the carpet edge. I fell hard, tumbling down the remaining stairs in a cascade of pain and terror. The crutches clattered away as I tried to protect my cast landing in a heap at the bottom. My vision went white with agony as every surgical site screamed in protest. "Help!" I called out, though my voice came out weak and breathless. "Please, someone help me." Footsteps crossed the floor above, but no one came. I could hear my mother greeting Madison's arriving friends, hear Madison's dramatic retelling of her near-death experience, hear champagne corks popping in celebration of her return to wellness. I lay on the cold basement floor for 20 minutes before managing to drag myself to the guest bed. The journey across the room left me sobbing with pain, but no one came to check. My prescribed pain medications, I discovered, were still in my mother's purse upstairs. "For safekeeping," she'd said at the hospital. "We don't want you becoming dependent." The basement guest room was exactly what you'd expect from a space designed to discourage extended stays. A lumpy twin bed pushed against the wall, a small dresser, missing one drawer pull, and a bathroom with a shower I couldn't use because of my cast. The single window, high and narrow, showed only feet passing by on the sidewalk above. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "Try to keep quiet down there. Madison's sharing her healing journey and the girls are very emotional." I wanted to scream. Instead, I took inventory of my situation. No access to my medications, no way to get food or water without climbing those stairs, no shower chair or any of the adaptive equipment the physical therapist had recommended. They'd created the perfect prison one where asking for help would make me the villain interrupting Madison's spotlight. The party upstairs grew louder. I could hear Madison describing her injuries, each retelling adding new dramatic elements. Now apparently she'd experienced temporary vision loss. Now she had recurring nightmares. Now she was considering writing a memoir about survival. My phone rang. Dr. Chen's number appeared on the screen. "Lorraine, I'm just checking in. How's the home recovery setup going?" I almost laughed at the question. It's challenging. "Are you keeping up with your pain management? Taking the antibiotics?" "The medications are upstairs," I admitted. "I'm in the basement and the stairs are difficult." Silence on her end then. "Lorraine, where exactly is your family?" "Having a party. for Madison to celebrate her recovery from her scratch. I see. Her tone could have frozen hell. And you've been home how long? About 3 hours. Have you eaten, had water, taken any medication? No. I'm documenting this call, Lorraine. This is medical neglect. You're a week post-operative with major orthopedic trauma. You need proper care. They're not neglecting me, I said automatically, years of family conditioning kicking in. They're just busy. Busy having a party while you're trapped in a basement without access to prescribed medications or basic necessities. Dr. Chen's voice was sharp. That's the definition of neglect. A crash came from upstairs, followed by laughter. Someone had dropped a glass. I heard my mother calling for the maid to clean it up. What are my options? I asked quietly. Several. We could readmit you, citing complications. Adult Protective Services is another option. Or you could try to find alternative housing with appropriate support. I can't afford any of that. My insurance is through my father's company. My savings are tied up in accounts he helped establish. I have maybe $3,000 I can access independently. Then we get creative. Let me make some calls. In the meantime, you need those medications. Is there anyone there who might help? I thought about it. The maid Elena had always been kind to me, but she needed this job. My parents' friends upstairs wouldn't cross them. Madison's yoga crowd saw me as the villain who'd almost made her miss certification. Maybe, I said, remembering Elena often stayed late during parties. I'll try. After hanging up, I texted Elena directly. I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm in the basement and can't manage the stairs. Could you possibly bring my medications down? They're in my mother's purse. 20 minutes later, soft footsteps descended the stairs. Elena appeared with a tray containing not just my medications, but a sandwich water and a thermos of soup. Miss Lorraine, she whispered, taking in my tear-stained face and awkward position on the bed. This is not right. You need help. Thank you. I managed gratefully, taking the pain pills. I'm okay. She shook her head. No, this is not okay. You need proper bed, proper care, not basement-like storage. It's just temporary. I lied. Elena set up the medications on the nightstand, making sure everything was within reach. I bring food when I can, but Miss Lorraine, you need real help. This family... She didn't finish, but her meaning was clear. After she left, I lay in the gathering darkness of the basement, listening to the party continue above. Madison's voice carried clearly through the thin floorboards. The worst part was the uncertainty, she was saying. Not knowing if I'd ever be able to practice yoga again. The doctors said my hand injury could have ended my spiritual journey. Someone gasped sympathetically. You're so brave, Madison. I'm just grateful to be alive, Madison continued. When I think about how close I came to death, I closed my eyes, the pain medication finally starting to dull the edge of my physical discomfort. But nothing could numb the emotional pain of lying forgotten in a basement while my sister celebrated her fictional survival story. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Hi, Lorraine, this is Sarah Fisher. I'm your cousin Pete's girlfriend. We were at the dinner last week when you served drinks. I heard you're recovering at your parents' place. Is everything okay? Pete mentioned you looked rough. Sarah. I barely knew her, had maybe spoken 10 words to her at family gatherings, but something about her reaching out about someone noticing I'd looked rough when my own family hadn't broke something loose in my chest. Honestly, no. I'm trapped in the basement and can't manage the stairs with my cast. It's been a rough day. Her response was immediate. That's horrible. Can I help bring you anything? Pete's working late, but I could stop by. I hesitated. Getting involved with extended family was dangerous, but I needed an ally, someone who could witness what was happening. Maybe just some groceries, things I can keep down here so I don't have to climb the stairs as often. On it, be there in an hour. When Sarah arrived, she had to ring the doorbell 3 times before someone answered. I could hear my mother's irritation at the interruption, then confusion when Sarah explained she was there to see me. Lorraine, she's resting. Doctor's orders. Then I'll be quiet, Sarah said firmly. Pete asked me to check on her. Name-dropping Pete, my father's nephew who worked at his firm, was smart. My mother couldn't refuse without causing family drama. Soon Sarah's footsteps descended to the basement, and she appeared with 2 grocery bags and a look of horror. "This is where they have you recovering." She took in the dingy room, the narrow stairs, the isolation. "This is insane." "It's temporary," I repeated the lie. Sarah unpacked the groceries, protein bars, bottled water, fruit that wouldn't spoil quickly, crackers, peanut butter, easy things I could manage one-handed. She also pulled out a small cooler. "For anything that needs to stay cold. Lorraine, this isn't right. You just had major surgery." "My family thinks I'm being dramatic," I said, "that I'm attention-seeking. While they throw a party for Madison's imaginary injuries." Sarah's voice was incredulous. "Pete told me about the yoga thing. Everyone's talking about how she grabbed the wheel." "Everyone?" "The family gossip network is in overdrive. Your Aunt Martha saw the security footage on the news. It's pretty clear what happened no matter what story your parents are spinning." Hope flickered in my chest. My family might control the narrative at home, but they couldn't control what others saw and said. Sarah stayed for an hour, helping me organize things within reach, setting up a system so I wouldn't have to move much. Before leaving, she took photos with her phone. "For Pete," she said, but we both knew that wasn't the only reason. "I'll check on you tomorrow, okay? And Lorraine, start documenting everything. Every text, every day they leave you down here every time you can't access what you need. Build a record." After she left the house, gradually quieted. The party ended, guests departed, and my family retired to their comfortable bedrooms upstairs. No one checked on me. No one brought dinner. No one asked if I needed anything. I lay in the darkness, grateful for Sarah's supplies and Elena's earlier kindness, but acutely aware of my situation. They'd brought me home not to care for me, but to control me. The basement wasn't a recovery room, it was a holding cell. But what they didn't realize was that isolation could be a double-edged sword. Yes, I was trapped and dependent, but I was also out of sight, able to think and plan without their constant manipulation. Sarah was right. I needed to document everything. I pulled out my phone and started typing, creating a detailed record of my first day home. Every ignored request, every barrier to basic care, every moment of medical neglect. My family thought they were breaking me down, wearing away my resistance until I'd sign whatever they put in front of me. Instead, they were giving me exactly what I needed: evidence, clear documented proof of their neglect and cruelty. Every day in this basement added to my case. Every ignored medical need strengthened my position. They celebrated Madison's fictional trauma upstairs, while I built a case from actual suffering below. It was almost poetic, really. They'd literally pushed me underground, never realizing that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you've buried, but failed to kill. The pain medication made me drowsy, but before I slept, I sent one more text to Dr. Chen, documenting everything as advised. "Thank you for caring." Her response was swift. "Stay strong. Truth has a way of surfacing. We're not done fighting." In the basement of my parents' house, surrounded by the evidence of their neglect, I smiled for the first time since the accident. They thought they'd won by isolating me. They had no idea they'd just given me the ammunition I needed. 2 weeks into my basement exile, my mother descended the stairs with an announcement that made my stomach drop. "You need to pull yourself together by Thursday." She said, not bothering to ask how I was feeling or if my pain had improved. "We're having the monthly family dinner, and it would be strange if you weren't there." "I can barely walk," I pointed out, gesturing to my cast and the crutches propped against the wall. "How exactly am I supposed to serve a formal dinner?" She waved dismissively. "You'll manage. You always do. Besides, everyone wants to hear Madison's inspiring recovery story. She's preparing a special presentation." Of course she was. Thursday arrived too quickly. I'd managed to develop a routine in my basement prison thanks to Sarah's daily supply runs and Elena's covert assistance. But the thought of navigating those stairs for an extended evening filled me with dread. My pain medication had been reduced by my mother, who decided I was taking too much despite Dr. Chen's prescribed dosage. We don't want an addiction issue on top of everything else, she'd said, pocketing half my pills. I started the climb at 5 o'clock, knowing it would take me at least 30 minutes to navigate the stairs safely. By the time I reached the top, sweat soaked through my clothes and my hands shook from exertion. The surgical sites on my ribs pulled with every breath. Finally, Madison said, breezing past me in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I thought you'd never make it up. Can you manage the appetizers? Mom's having a crisis about the canapes? I looked at her incredulously. Madison, I can barely stand. God, you're so selfish, she snapped. This dinner is important. Aunt Patricia is bringing her friend who's a literary agent. She might be interested in my survival memoir. Her survival memoir. The absurdity of it made me want to laugh, but I knew that would only cause more problems. I managed to change into something presentable, though bending to put on proper shoes was impossible. I settled for the slip-on flats Sarah had brought me, hoping no one would notice how they clashed with my dress. The relatives began arriving at 6. Aunt Martha and Uncle George, my cousins Pete and Jennifer, Aunt Patricia, with her literary agent friend and various second cousins, I only saw at these mandatory gatherings. I positioned myself in the corner of the kitchen, ostensibly organizing appetizer trays, but really just trying to stay upright. Lorraine. Aunt Martha's voice boomed as she entered. My goodness, you look terrible. Should you be up and about? Before I could answer, my mother swooped in. She's fine, just milking the situation as usual. Madison's the one we're worried about. The poor thing has been having such awful flashbacks. I watched Aunt Martha's expression shift, something calculating entering her eyes. Yes, about that accident. I saw the most interesting thing on the news coverage. The media always gets things wrong. My father interrupted smoothly. You know how they sensationalize everything. The evening progressed in its usual pattern. I limped between kitchen and dining room, serving drinks and appetizers, while my family pretended I was invisible. Madison held court in the living room, dramatically recounting her near-death experience to anyone who'd listen. The glass was everywhere, she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. I could see Lorraine slumped over the wheel, and I thought, this is it. This is how I die. But you survived, the literary agent said, scribbling notes. That's powerful. The sister who lived while the driver's recklessness almost killed you both. I nearly dropped the tray of champagne flutes I was carrying. The narrative was evolving. Now I wasn't just negligent. I was the reckless driver who'd nearly killed my innocent sister. During the main course, which I served while balanced precariously on one crutch, Aunt Martha kept shooting me meaningful looks. When I refilled her wine glass, she grabbed my wrist gently. After dinner, she whispered, powder room, 5 minutes after I leave the table. I nodded, slightly curious about what she wanted to share. The dinner conversation revolved entirely around Madison's trauma and recovery. She'd prepared an actual slideshow, complete with photos of her injured hand from various angles and screenshots of supportive messages from her yoga community. This is slide 23, she announced, clicking her laptop. Here you can see the emotional support circle my studio created. Over 200 people have contributed to my Healing Journey Fund. Healing Journey Fund, Cousin Jennifer asked. For my ongoing therapy and the spiritual retreat, I need to process this trauma, Madison explained. The generosity has been overwhelming. They were fundraising. My sister was literally profiting from an accident she'd caused while I'd maxed out my credit card on medical copays. And where's Lorraine's fund? Pete asked suddenly, his voice cutting through Madison's presentation. The room went silent. I mean, he continued, looking directly at my parents. She's the one with actual injuries, surgeries, physical therapy, time off work. Surely she needs more financial support than Madison's therapy. My mother's laugh was brittle. Lorraine's fine. Her insurance covers everything. Insurance doesn't cover everything, Sarah said quietly from her seat beside Pete. It doesn't cover the lost wages, the ongoing medication costs, the mobility aids she needs but hasn't received. Since when are you an expert on our family's finances? My father asked coldly. Since I've been bringing your daughter groceries because she can't get up the stairs to the kitchen, Sarah shot back. Since I've been documenting the medical neglect happening in this house. The temperature in the room plummeted. Madison's slideshow continued playing in the background, a loop of her various injuries and inspirational quotes about survival. I think, Aunt Martha said suddenly, that we should see what the news really showed about the accident, since we're all so concerned about accuracy. She pulled out her phone before my parents could object, connecting it to the television with practiced ease. Within moments, security footage from the intersection filled the screen. The room watched in silence as the grainy footage played. You could clearly see our car approaching the intersection. The light was green. Then suddenly, the car jerked violently to the right toward the exit ramp, just as the delivery truck entered the intersection. "Pause it," Aunt Martha commanded. She pointed to the screen. "Look at the passenger side. See that movement? That's someone grabbing the wheel from the driver." "The footage is unclear," my mother said weakly. "Actually," Aunt Patricia's literary agent friend spoke up, "I enhance video for true crime documentaries. This is quite clear. The passenger caused the accident." Madison slammed her laptop shut. "This is exactly the kind of victim blaming I've been dealing with. My therapist says it's common for people to create false narratives to avoid confronting the reality of trauma. The only false narrative here," Cousin Jennifer said slowly, "is the one where you're the victim." I stood frozen in the doorway, a tray of dessert plates balanced against my hip. The truth was finally being spoken aloud in front of witnesses my parents couldn't dismiss or control. "Lorraine was texting," my father stated, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "No," Pete said firmly. "She wasn't. We have a witness who works in the building overlooking that intersection. She saw Madison recording herself and then lunge for the wheel. She's prepared to make a statement." "Who?" my mother demanded. "What witness?" "That's not important right now," Aunt Martha said. "What's important is that we've all been watching this family pretend that Madison is some kind of survivor hero, while Lorraine serves dinner on crutches with a leg full of metal pins." "I think I should go," the literary agent said, gathering her things. "This isn't the kind of survival story I'm interested in publishing." "Wait," Madison cried out. "You don't understand. I have trauma, real trauma. My hand has healed completely," I said quietly, finally finding my voice. "While my leg may never be the same, I may walk with a limp for the rest of my life. But please tell us more about your trauma." The room erupted. Madison began crying hysterically about betrayal and jealousy. My parents tried to restore order while simultaneously glaring daggers at me. Several relatives excused themselves, muttering about having seen enough. Aunt Martha caught my eye and nodded toward the hallway. I followed her, moving as quickly as my crutches would allow. In the powder room, she pulled me into a careful hug. "I've been gathering evidence," she said quietly. "The security footage, witness statements, even some interesting financial documents about insurance claims. Your parents aren't as clever as they think." "Why?" I asked, overwhelmed by this unexpected support. "Because I've watched this family's dynamic for years," she said fiercely. "Watch them dim your light to make Madison shine brighter. But this crosses every line. They left you to bleed while they chased a yoga class. That's not family, that's criminal." She pressed a USB drive into my hand. "Everything's on here. Security footage, witness contact information, even some interesting discoveries about Madison's previous insurance claims at college." Previous claims? Let's just say this isn't her first time playing victim for profit. But that's a conversation for another day. Right now, you need to protect yourself. Your parents are going to escalate after tonight. She was right. By the time I made it back to the dining room, my parents had cleared out most of the guests. Only Pete and Sarah remained, stubbornly refusing to leave me alone with my immediate family. "You've ruined everything," my mother hissed at me. "Madison's literary opportunity, our family's reputation, everything." "I told the truth," I said simply. "The truth?" Madison laughed bitterly. "The truth is that you've always been jealous of me. Now you're trying to destroy my life because you can't handle being the failure of the family. The only failure here, Pete said, standing up, is parents who care more about their image than their injured daughter. Lorraine, get your things. You're coming home with us. She's not going anywhere, my father said. This is a family matter. No, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. It's not anymore. I looked at each of them, these people who shared my blood but had never shared my pain. I'll get my things. What little I have here. If you leave, my mother warned, don't expect any support from us, financial or otherwise. What support? I asked. The basement room, the withheld medication, the joy of serving dinner while my sister profits from my injuries. Sarah helped me navigate the stairs one last time, gathering my few belongings while my family raged upstairs. As we loaded my things into Pete's car, I could hear Madison screaming about betrayal and sabotage. But I also heard something else carried on the night wind through the open windows, the sound of truth finally breaking free, shattering their carefully constructed lies like glass at an intersection. They'd invited witnesses to their performance, never imagining the script might be rewritten. Now the whole family knew the truth had seen the evidence with their own eyes. As we drove away, I clutched Aunt Martha's USB drive and felt something I hadn't experienced since the accident. Hope. The revelation had cost me what remained of my relationship with my immediate family, but it had also shown me something precious. I wasn't alone. I had allies' evidence and, most importantly, the truth on my side. The family dinner had been meant to showcase Madison's false victimhood. Instead, it had exposed them all. And this was just the beginning. Living with Pete and Sarah was like stepping into an alternate universe where people actually cared about my well-being. They'd converted their ground floor guest room into a recovery space complete with grab bars in the bathroom and a path clear of obstacles. For the first time since the accident, I could move around without fearing I'd fall. But my parents weren't done with me. The doorbell rang on my third day there while Pete was at work and Sarah had run to the pharmacy for my prescriptions. Through the peephole, I saw James Morrison, my parents' longtime attorney, looking like a vulture in a three-piece suit. I didn't open the door. Whatever you're selling, I'm not interested. Lorraine. His voice oozed through the wood. We need to discuss your situation. Your parents are concerned about your mental state. My mental state is fine. Living with relatives, refusing to cooperate with insurance procedures, making wild accusations about your sister. These aren't the actions of a rational person. I stayed silent, recording the conversation on my phone as Sarah had taught me. I have documents that need your signature, he continued. Simple forms acknowledging your role in the accident. Sign them and your parents are prepared to be generous. Refuse and things become complicated. How complicated? Your health insurance, for starters. Your father's company provides that, doesn't it? And your apartment lease has his name as guarantor. Your car loan, which I believe is several months from being paid off, could be called in if the co-signer withdraws support. There it was. The threats my father had hinted at in the hospital now being delivered by his legal attack dog. I need to review any documents with my own attorney, I said through the door. Morrison laughed. Your attorney? With what money, Lorraine? Your accounts are nearly empty, your credit cards are maxed from medical expenses, and you're not currently working. Who exactly do you think will represent you? That's my problem to solve. Actually, it's about to become a much bigger problem. He said, his tone shifting to something darker. Madison's seeking damages for defamation. She says you've been spreading lies about the accident causing her emotional distress and damaging her reputation. The fundraising for her healing journey has dropped significantly since your little performance at dinner. Her fraudulent fundraising, you mean? Careful, Lorraine. That sounds like another defamatory statement. We're prepared to file both civil and criminal complaints. Insurance fraud is a serious accusation to make without proof. I have proof, I said quietly. Silence from the other side of the door. Then, Whatever you think you have, I guarantee our resources exceed yours. Your parents want this resolved quietly. Sign the papers, accept responsibility, and receive a generous settlement for your troubles. Fight us and we'll destroy you legally and financially." I heard papers sliding under the door. "I'll leave these for your review. You have 48 hours before we proceed with formal action." His footsteps retreated, and I waited until I heard his car leave before retrieving the documents. My hands shook as I read through them. It was worse than I'd imagined. Not only was I to accept full responsibility for the accident, but I was also to sign away any rights to future claims, agree to a gag order preventing me from discussing the incident, and most shocking of all, assign power of attorney to my parents for all medical and financial decisions related to my recovery. They wanted complete control. When Sarah returned, she found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by the papers, tears streaming down my face. "Oh, honey," she said, setting down the pharmacy bags. "What happened?" I explained Morrison's visit and showed her the documents. Her expression grew darker with each page she read. "This is insane," she said. "They're trying to legally erase you. This power of attorney clause would let them commit you to a psychiatric facility if they claimed you were unstable." "I can't fight them," I said. "Morrison's right. I have no money, no resources. They'll bury me." "Maybe not," Sarah said thoughtfully. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through contacts. "My college roommate is a personal injury attorney. She might have some ideas." An hour later, we were on a video call with Rebecca Chen, no relation to my surgeon, but sharing the same fierce energy. "This is legal intimidation at its finest," Rebecca said after I'd explained the situation. "But they've made some mistakes. First, delivering these documents while you're still recovering could be seen as coercion. Second, threatening your insurance and housing while demanding you sign legal documents, that's extortion." "But I can't afford to fight them," I said. "You can't afford not to," Rebecca countered. "Look, personal injury cases like yours where liability is clear and damages are significant. Attorneys take those on contingency. You don't pay unless you win." "But Madison grabbed the wheel. How do I prove that?" "You mentioned security footage." I nodded, thinking of Aunt Martha's USB drive hidden in my room. "Then you have more than most clients start with. Here's what I propose I'll take your case. Not just defending against their threats, but actively pursuing claims against the proper parties. The truck driver who ran the red light, yes, but also potentially your family for the accident itself." "Sue my family?" "Your sister caused the accident. Your parents are attempting to cover it up through insurance fraud. They've medically neglected you during recovery. These are all actionable claims." My head spun with the implications. "They'll destroy me if I do this." "They're already trying to destroy you," Rebecca pointed out. "The question is whether you'll let them do it unopposed." That evening, Pete came home to find me deep in legal research on his laptop. Sarah had filled him in, and his face was grim. "I've been doing some digging at the office," he said. "Quiet inquiries about your father's business dealings. Lorraine, there are irregularities, significant ones. If you pursue this information, might surface that they really don't want exposed." "What kind of irregularities?" "The kind that interest federal investigators. But that's not my story to pursue. What matters is they're not as bulletproof as they think." The next morning, Morrison called the house. Sarah answered, putting him on speaker at my request. "Miss Cooper, I'm looking for Lorraine Maxwell." "She's unavailable," Sarah said smoothly. "Can I take a message?" "She has 24 hours remaining to sign those documents. Make sure she understands the consequences of refusing." "Actually," I said, speaking up from beside Sarah, "I've retained counsel. All future communication should go through my attorney, Rebecca Chen." "Silence, then. You've hired an attorney. With what money?" "That's between me and my counsel. Her contact information will be provided shortly." "Lorraine, you're making a terrible mistake. Your parents want to help you, but their patience isn't infinite." "Neither is mine," I said. "Goodbye, Mr. Morrison." That afternoon, Rebecca arrived in person with her own stack of documents. Where Morrison had brought threats, she brought options. We file a personal injury claim against the trucking company's insurance, she explained. That's straightforward, he ran the red light. But we also document Madison's role in causing your loss of control. We have the footage potential witnesses and a clear pattern of cover-up attempts. What about their threats? My insurance, my apartment. I've already sent a letter to your father's company's HR department informing them that any termination of your health insurance while you're recovering from injuries would be seen as retaliation. As for the apartment, illegally evicting someone on medical leave is a lawsuit waiting to happen. They're hoping you don't know your rights. And the defamation claims, Rebecca actually smiled. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Everything you've said is backed by evidence. Their threats are empty, designed to scare you into compliance. We spent hours preparing my formal response to Morrison's demands, not just refusing to sign, but counter-proposing full coverage of my medical expenses, lost wages and pain and suffering, with no admission of fault and no gag order. They'll never agree to this, I said. Of course not. But now we're negotiating from a position of strength rather than fear, and every document they file, every threat they make, becomes part of our evidence trail. 2 days later, the escalation began. My father sent a formal letter terminating his guarantor status on my apartment lease. My car loan company called about concerns regarding my ability to pay. Madison posted a tearful video about being victimized twice, first by the accident, then by vicious lies. But for every move they made, Rebecca had a counter. She filed injunctions, sent cease and desist letters, and began building a comprehensive case file that painted a clear picture of a family attempting to profit from insurance fraud while intimidating their injured daughter into silence. The turning point came when Rebecca subpoenaed the insurance company's records. Buried in the paperwork was a smoking gun. The preliminary settlement offer my parents had mentioned at the hospital wasn't for my medical bills. It was a liability settlement from the trucking company for $750,000 made out to me as the driver, which my parents were attempting to redirect through legal manipulation. They were trying to steal $750,000. Rebecca said, her voice filled with disgust. While you suffered in a basement, they were planning how to spend your settlement. I stared at the numbers, understanding finally why they'd been so desperate for my signature. This wasn't about protecting Madison or the family reputation. It was about money. It had always been about money. What do we do? I asked. We fight, Rebecca said simply. We expose every lie document, every crime, and show the world exactly who your family really is. They wanted legal war, they've got one. The battle was just beginning, but for the first time since the accident, I felt like I had a chance. They had money, connections, and ruthlessness. But I had something more powerful, the truth, a brilliant attorney, and the kind of righteous anger that comes from being pushed too far. Morrison had given me 48 hours to surrender. Instead, I'd use them to arm myself for war. My family thought they could bury me in legal threats and financial ruin. They were about to learn that sometimes the person you try to bury is actually planting roots, preparing to grow into something strong enough to tear down everything you've built on lies. Madison's rescheduled birthday party was set for a Saturday 3 weeks after the family dinner disaster. I knew about it only because Sarah had seen the Facebook event invitation, a glittering digital promise of Madison's Survivor Celebration, a night of healing and hope. I wasn't invited, of course, but my mother called Pete's house the day before with a different kind of invitation. Despite everything, she said, her voice dripping with false concern, we don't want Madison's special day ruined by family drama. If Lorraine could help with the catering quietly, it would go a long way toward healing this rift. You want her to work at the party celebrating the accident she's still recovering from? Sarah asked incredulously. It's not about the accident, my mother insisted. It's Madison's birthday. Surely Lorraine can set aside her jealousy for one evening. I took the phone from Sarah. What exactly would you need me to do? Just help Elena with serving. Nothing strenuous. Wear long sleeves to cover any unsightly scars. We don't want to upset the guests. The calculation was swift. I needed to see what they were planning, what narrative they were spinning, now that the family knew the truth. Plus, Elena might have overheard something useful. Fine, I said. But I'm bringing Sarah as my assistant. My mobility is still limited. My mother hesitated, then agreed. She had no choice if she wanted the party fully staffed. Saturday arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood as Sarah helped me dress. The long-sleeved black server's outfit my mother had specified covered the still-healing surgical scars on my arms from the glass. My leg cast had been replaced with a walking boot 2 days prior, but stairs remained challenging. "You don't have to do this," Sarah said as we drove to my parents' house. "Yes, I do," I replied. "Rebecca says we need to document their ongoing behavior. What better place than a party where Madison plays victim to a crowd?" We entered through the service entrance, finding Elena in the kitchen, surrounded by catering trays. Her face lit up when she saw me, then immediately clouded with concern. "Miss Lorraine, you should not be here. It's not right making you serve at her party." "I'm okay, Elena. Just need to get through tonight." She hugged me carefully, mindful of my injuries. "I save all the receipts you asked for," she whispered. "The ones for Miss Madison's purchases. They're in my locker." Before I could ask more, my mother swept in. "Lorraine, good. The guests will arrive in an hour. Try to stay in the background. This is Madison's night to shine." As if Madison ever did anything else. The house had been transformed into what looked like a wellness retreat center. Crystals lined every surface, sage bundles burned in decorative holders, and poster boards displaying Madison's healing journey formed a gallery in the foyer. The centerpiece was a blown-up photo of her barely visible hand scratch with the caption, "Visible wounds heal, but invisible scars last forever." "Is she serious?" Sarah muttered, taking in the display. "Completely," I confirmed, remembering years of similar dramatics. Guests began arriving precisely at 7. Madison's yoga friends, influences from her wellness community, and carefully curated family members who either didn't know about the dinner revelation or were willing to pretend it hadn't happened. I recognized several from their social media profiles, mini celebrities in the world of sponsored meditation apps and overpriced athletic wear. Madison made her entrance in a flowing white dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her perfectly healthy hand adorned with a delicate silver bracelet engraved with Survivor. "Thank you all for being part of my resurrection," she announced to the assembled crowd. 3 weeks ago, I faced death. Tonight, I celebrate life." Sarah and I exchanged glances as we circulated with champagne trays. The guests ate up Madison's performance, offering hugs and words of support for her incredible journey. I was refilling glasses near a group of Madison's yoga friends when I heard my name. "Is that the sister?" one whispered. "The one who caused it?" "Shh, Brittany. She's apparently unstable. Madison said she's had to get a restraining order." A restraining order that was news to me and completely false. "Poor Madison." Another chimed in. "Imagine having to see your attempted killer at your own birthday party." Attempted killer. The narrative had evolved again. I moved away before I could react, finding refuge in the kitchen where Elena was plating appetizers. "Miss Lorraine," she said quietly, "you need to know. They planning something. I heard your mother on phone with lawyer. They want to make big announcement tonight." "What kind of announcement?" "Something about commitment papers. Said they have enough witnesses now." My blood ran cold. The party wasn't just a celebration. It was a trap. I found Sarah immediately. "We might need to leave. Elena says they're planning something about commitment papers." Sarah's eyes widened. The power of attorney documents. If they can claim you're unstable in front of witnesses. We needed to be careful but not panic. Running would only feed their narrative. Instead, we documented everything, Sarah discreetly recording on her phone while I served and listened. The party reached its peak around 9 when Madison called for everyone's attention. A projection screen descended from the ceiling and lights dimmed. "I want to share my story," Madison announced, "the full truth of what happened that horrible day." What followed was a 20-minute presentation that bore no resemblance to reality. In Madison's version, I'd been drinking the morning of the accident. I'd been speeding, texting, and had ignored her pleas to slow down. When the truck appeared, I'd frozen in panic while brave Madison tried desperately to grab the wheel and save us both. The worst part, Madison said, tears streaming perfectly down her face, is that she still won't admit what she did. The guilt has driven her to create elaborate fantasies where I'm somehow to blame. The crowd murmured sympathetically. Several guests shot me disgusted looks as I stood frozen in the corner, a tray of empty glasses in my hands. Which is why, Madison continued, my parents and I have made the difficult decision to seek conservatorship. Lorraine needs help, professional help, before she hurts someone else. There it was, the announcement Elena had warned about. My father stepped forward with documents. We have paperwork here from multiple medical professionals confirming Lorraine's deteriorating mental state. If any of you have witnessed her erratic behavior tonight, we'd appreciate your signatures as supporting witnesses. Erratic behavior, I said, my voice carrying across the room. You mean serving drinks with a healing broken leg while my sister lies about an accident she caused? See, my mother said quickly, these delusions are getting worse. She actually believes Madison grabbed the wheel, despite all evidence to the contrary. You mean the security footage that clearly shows exactly that? A voice said from the back of the room. Everyone turned. Charlotte Williams, Madison's best friend from yoga teacher training, stepped forward with her phone in hand. What are you doing here? Madison's voice pitched high with panic. You weren't invited. No, I wasn't, Charlotte agreed. Not after I told you I wouldn't lie for you anymore. But I thought everyone here should see what really happened. She connected her phone to the projection system before anyone could stop her. The screen that had shown Madison's fictional presentation now displayed security footage, but not the intersection tape everyone had seen. This was from inside a building looking down at our car in the moments before the crash. The image was crystal clear. Madison taking selfies. Madison pointing at the yoga studio. Madison lunging across the car and grabbing the wheel as I fought to maintain control. I was in my office getting my mat for class, Charlotte explained to the stunned room. I always record my view to post morning motivation videos. I caught everything. That's edited, Madison screeched. She's lying. Charlotte's always been jealous of my influence. Is that why you offered me $5,000 to delete it? Charlotte asked calmly. Or why you threatened to ruin my teaching career if I came forward? The room erupted. Guests pulled out phones, recording Madison's meltdown as she lunged for Charlotte's phone. My parents tried to restore order while simultaneously attempting to confiscate devices. You're ruining everything, Madison screamed at me. This was supposed to be my night, my celebration. Why can't you just admit what you did? I was unconscious and bleeding while you stepped over me for a yoga class, I said quietly, but my voice carried in the sudden silence. I nearly died while you took selfies with your scratch. I recovered in a basement while you raised money for a trauma that never happened. What exactly am I supposed to admit? Get out, my mother shrieked. Both of you, this is our house. Gladly, I said. But before leaving, I addressed the room. Those commitment papers they want you to sign, they're trying to steal a $750,000 insurance settlement. This isn't about my mental health. It's about money. It's always been about money. Sarah and I left through the front door this time, heads high despite the chaos behind us. Charlotte followed us out. I'm sorry I didn't come forward sooner, she said. Madison's been my friend for years. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. But when she started profiting from it, planning that book, taking money from people who genuinely wanted to help, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Would you be willing to make a formal statement? Sarah asked. Already did, Charlotte said. Sent the video to the police yesterday. I'm meeting with them Monday to give a full statement. We sat in Sarah's car processing what had just happened. The birthday party meant to establish my instability had instead revealed Madison's lies to her entire social circle. She'll claim the video is fake, I said. Let her, Sarah replied. Every lie she tells now just adds to the evidence of fraud. Rebecca is going to have a field day with this. My phone buzzed with texts from party guests who'd gotten my number from Charlotte. Apologies, offers of support, and most importantly, confirmations that they would not be signing any commitment papers. The humiliation had been mine to endure for the first hour of that party. But by the end, it was Madison standing exposed in her white dress, her carefully crafted victim narrative shattered like glass at an intersection. They'd wanted witnesses to my supposed instability. Instead, they'd created witnesses to their fraud. The hunter had become the hunted, and the prey they'd thought was trapped had just revealed sharp teeth. Charlotte's video spread through Madison's wellness community within hours. By morning, her Instagram follower count had plummeted, and the fundraising page for her healing journey had been reported for fraud. But the best part came in Elena's text later that night. I quit, but first I copied all receipts. Madison bought new car last week, paid cash, said insurance money was for healing. I have proof. The birthday party had been meant to be the final nail in my coffin. Instead, it became the hammer that started demolishing their house of lies. And we were just getting started. The aftermath of Madison's party created a ripple effect I hadn't anticipated. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from people who'd witnessed her meltdown, but the most surprising text came from someone I'd barely spoken to before the accident. Lorraine, it's Samantha Chen from your office. I heard about what happened. Can we meet? I have information about your father's insurance claims that you need to know. I met Samantha at a quiet coffee shop downtown, my walking boot making me move slower than usual. She was already there, laptop open, looking uncharacteristically serious. I shouldn't be doing this, she began without preamble. But what your family is doing to you is criminal. I process insurance claims for the company. Your father's been filing multiple claims related to the accident. Multiple claims. She turned her laptop toward me. One for the vehicle damage standard. But then there's Madison's claim for psychological trauma estimated at $200,000. Your mother's claim for emotional distress as a witness, another $100,000. They're also billing for Madison's therapy, her yoga retreat, even a meditation coach. I stared at the numbers. They're claiming over $500,000 in addition to my settlement, while simultaneously trying to get power of attorney over your $750,000, Samantha confirmed. If they succeed, they'd control over $1 million from this accident. Can you send me these documents? She shook her head. I'd lose my job, but I can tell you that insurance fraud investigators take anonymous tips, especially when the claims involve family members profiting from an injury they may have caused. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Charlotte's name appeared on screen. Lorraine, I'm at the police station. 2 other people came forward with footage after seeing mine. One is from a dashcam that caught Madison leaning into the driver's side moments before impact. The detective wants to know if you're pressing charges. Pressing charges against my sister. The weight of that decision sat heavy on my chest. I need to think about it, I said. Understood, but Lorraine. The detective mentioned something about previous incidents at Madison's college. You might want to look into that. After Samantha left, I met Sarah and Rebecca at Pete's house. The dining table was covered in documents, laptops, and legal pads. Charlotte's video has gone viral in the yoga community, Sarah reported. Madison's lost 3 sponsorship deals, and her studio asked her not to return until the investigation is resolved. Good, Rebecca said, but we need more. Charlotte mentioned college incidents. I pulled out Aunt Martha's USB drive, which I'd been carrying since the family dinner. Martha said something about Madison's previous insurance claims at college. We plugged it in, finding a treasure trove of documents Martha had somehow obtained. Police reports, university disciplinary records, insurance claims, and most damning, a sealed settlement agreement. Holy shit, Sarah breathed, reading over my shoulder. Madison accused a professor of assault, filed an insurance claim for trauma, then suddenly dropped everything after receiving a $100,000 settlement. Look at the timeline, Rebecca pointed out. She made the accusation right after failing his midterm. The professor had documentation showing she'd plagiarized her entire paper. She weaponized victimhood, I said slowly. even in college. And your parents helped cover it up, Rebecca added, pointing to their signatures on the settlement documents. They've been enabling this pattern for years. A knock at the door interrupted us. Pete answered, returning with an unexpected visitor, Dr. Kenneth Morrison, the psychiatrist from my parents' attempted intervention. "Ms. Maxwell," he said formally, "I apologize for arriving unannounced, but I felt this couldn't wait. Your parents attempted to have me write a recommendation for involuntary commitment based on our brief interaction at their home." My heart skipped. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That you showed no signs of mental instability. In fact, you demonstrated remarkable composure given the circumstances." He handed me an envelope. "My official assessment should you need it. I've also reported their attempt to the medical board. Using mental health services to control and silence family members is a serious ethical violation." "Why help me?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "Because I've seen too many families use psychiatry as a weapon. Your parents were quite clear about their intentions. They wanted you declared incompetent to invalidate any testimony about the accident. I won't be party to that." After he left, we sat in stunned silence. The alliance against my family was growing organically built from professionals with conscience and friends with courage. "We need to coordinate," Rebecca said finally. "Samantha's insurance information, Charlotte's video evidence, Dr. Morrison's testimony, Martha's historical documents. Separately, they're damaging. Together, they're devastating." We spent the next hours creating a comprehensive timeline. Madison's pattern of false victimhood stretching back years, my parents' complicity in covering up her crimes, the current insurance fraud attempted through multiple channels, the medical neglect and attempted involuntary commitment. "This is RICO-level conspiracy," Rebecca muttered, "racketeering through insurance fraud." My phone buzzed. Elena's name appeared with a photo attachment. "Miss Lorraine cleaning Madison room today. Found this hidden in closet." The image showed a notebook, Madison's handwriting clear on the visible page. "Accident story draft 3. Emphasize PTSD symptoms, mention nightmares and flashbacks. Research complex trauma for authenticity. Book proposal deadline next month." She was drafting her trauma before the accident even happened. "Elena," I texted back, "can you photograph every page?" "Already did, sending now." The pages revealed Madison's entire plan, staged photos of her injury, scripts for social media posts, a timeline for gradually revealing symptoms, contact information for literary agents who specialized in trauma memoirs. Most chilling, a note dated 2 days before the accident. "Elle picking us up for birthday brunch. Perfect opportunity if I can create right scenario." "She planned it," I said, nausea rising. "Maybe not the exact accident, but she planned to create some kind of incident to build her victim narrative." "This changes everything," Rebecca said grimly. "This isn't just insurance fraud. This is potentially attempted murder." Charlotte called again. "Lorraine, you need to see Madison's latest Instagram story." I pulled it up on my phone. Madison, tears streaming, addressing her followers. "My own sister is trying to destroy me. She's turned people against me with doctored videos and lies. I'm the real victim here, and I won't be silenced anymore. If anything happens to me, ask Lorraine why she wanted me gone." "She's setting you up," Sarah said immediately, "making it look like you're dangerous." "Or setting herself up," Rebecca countered. "This reads like she's planning something and creating a digital alibi." We debated our next move when Pete arrived home with unexpected news. "I've been quietly investigating at the firm," he said. "Your father's been moving money, large transfers to offshore accounts. Either he's hiding assets from the divorce he thinks is coming, or he's planning to run," Rebecca finished. "Take the insurance money and disappear before fraud charges hit." The secret alliance had become more crucial than ever. We weren't just fighting for my settlement or vindication anymore. We were racing against time to expose their crimes before they could escape consequences. "What do we do?" I asked. "We strike first," Rebecca said. "Tomorrow morning, we file everything. Criminal complaints, civil lawsuits, insurance fraud reports. We hit them from every angle simultaneously. "The nuclear option," Pete said quietly. "They tried to bury her alive," Sarah said fiercely. "Nuclear is the only option left." That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from pain, though that was still constant, but from the weight of what we were about to unleash. By tomorrow, the secret alliance would go public. Every document, every piece of evidence, every witness statement would be filed with authorities. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "This is Detective Walsh. Watch the birthday party videos. Madison Maxwell is now under investigation for filing false police reports and insurance fraud. Thought you should know. Justice is coming." I smiled in the darkness. They'd left me bleeding and shattered glass, but I'd used every shard to build a case against them. The secret alliance had given me something my family never had: people who fought for truth rather than profit. Tomorrow we'd show the world exactly who the Maxwell family really was. And unlike Madison's fiction, our story would be backed by evidence witnessed by professionals, and most importantly, true. The girl they'd left for dead was very much alive, and she was done being silent. 3 days after filing our coordinated legal assault, I had a follow-up appointment with Dr. Chen. The irony wasn't lost on me that I had to take an Uber because my family had succeeded in having my car repossessed while I was recovering. But Sarah had insisted I go alone, saying I needed to reclaim my independence. The medical complex felt different now that I wasn't arriving in crisis. I could actually notice details like the soft watercolor paintings and the way sunlight streamed through the atrium. Dr. Chen's nurse, Maria, recognized me immediately. "Lorraine walking on your own now. How wonderful." Her smile was warm but concerned. "Dr. Chen will be so pleased to see your progress." In the examination room, I changed into the provided gown, catching sight of my reflection. The scars were still angry red lines across my torso, a permanent map of that morning's violence. My leg, though functional in the boot, showed the surgical scars where they'd pieced my bones back together. Dr. Chen entered with my thick medical file, her expression carefully neutral. "Lorraine, let's see how you're healing." The examination was thorough but gentle. She checked each surgical site, tested my range of motion, and assessed the nerve damage in my hand. Throughout it all, she documented everything with unusual precision. "Your physical recovery is remarkable," she said finally. "But I need to ask about your living situation. My notes indicate you were discharged to your parents' care." "That didn't work out," I said carefully. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I see. Lorraine, there's something we need to discuss. I've been reviewing your complete medical records from the accident, and there are discrepancies I'm ethically obligated to address." Discrepancies. She pulled up multiple computer screens showing various charts and timelines. "Your surgery was delayed by 2 hours and 17 minutes, not because of medical necessity, but because your parents insisted on prioritizing your sister's non-emergent imaging. I knew there was a delay, but 2 hours, during which time your condition deteriorated significantly. You required 2 units of blood that might not have been necessary with prompt treatment. But that's not the worst part." She turned the screen toward me. "These are your original trauma assessment notes, the ones I dictated during your initial treatment." I read the clinical language that somehow made the horror more real. Patient extracted from driver's side with significant blood loss. Family members present but refusing to provide medical history. Sister being treated for minor abrasion while patient hemorrhaging. Parents stating patient is attention-seeking and prone to exaggeration. "Maria documented everything," Dr. Chen continued. "She was disturbed enough to file an incident report. Hospital administration buried it after a call from your father, but we keep our own copies." "You could get in trouble for showing me this." "I could get in more trouble for staying silent," she countered. "There's more. The delay in your treatment caused complications you don't know about." My stomach dropped. "What complications?" Dr. Chen pulled up another screen, this one showing surgical images. "The damage to your left ovary was severe. We saved it, but the scarring is significant. Combined with the pelvic trauma." Lorraine, your ability to have children has been compromised. Not impossible, but it will be difficult. The room spun slightly. I gripped the examination table, processing this new loss. My parents know. They were informed. They signed the surgical consent forms acknowledging the risks of delayed treatment. She pulled up the forms, my parents' signatures clear at the bottom. They chose to proceed with the delay anyway. To prioritize Madison's yoga class, I said numbly. I need to ask you something difficult, Dr. Chen said gently. Have you considered that their neglect might have been intentional, that perhaps they wanted your injuries to be worse? The thought had crept into my mind during dark nights in the basement, but I'd pushed it away as too horrible to contemplate. Why would they want that? Larger insurance settlements for more severe injuries, or perhaps... She hesitated, then continued. Perhaps they hoped you wouldn't survive to contradict their version of events. I thought about the basement stairs, the withheld medication, the attempts to have me declared incompetent. Each action suddenly seemed less like negligence and more like a pattern. Maria wants to provide a statement, Dr. Chen said. So do several other nurses who witnessed your family's behavior. We've been waiting for you to take legal action. You have... Lorraine, what we witnessed that day haunts us. Medical professionals are trained to maintain objectivity, but watching parents actively interfere with their critically injured daughter's care while pampering another child's microscopic injury. Several nurses went home and hugged their own children extra tight that night. She handed me a folder. These are copies of everything. Your complete medical records, the incident reports, documentation of the treatment delay, and its consequences. The originals are secured in multiple locations. I flipped through pages of medical terminology, each line documenting not just my injuries, but my family's cruelty in clinical detail. One note from Maria stood out. Patient's mother asked if daughter's facial scarring would be permanent, seemed pleased when informed it likely would be. Patient was conscious and heard this exchange. I don't remember that, I said. Trauma has a way of protecting us from the worst moments, Dr. Chen said gently, but we remember and we documented. What about HIPAA? Can you share these records? You're authorizing release to your attorney, correct? She smiled slightly. And there are exceptions for reporting suspected abuse and neglect, which this absolutely was. A knock interrupted us. Maria entered with another nurse I recognized from the trauma bay, Janet. We heard you were here, Janet said without preamble. We've been hoping you'd come back. Not injured, she added quickly, but so we could tell you what we saw. We've never seen anything like it, Maria added. In 20 years of emergency nursing, I've never watched parents step over their bleeding child to fuss over a scratch. It broke something in all of us who were there. Would you testify to that? I asked. Gladly, Janet said firmly. We've actually been keeping a group chat, all the staff who witnessed it, sharing memories, documentation, making sure nothing gets lost or buried. A group chat. Maria pulled out her phone. 14 members, doctors, nurses, EMTs, even the radiologist who had to delay your CT scan for Madison's unnecessary full-body imaging. We called it Justice for the Girl in the Glass. I stared at the screen showing message after message from medical professionals I'd never met, all documenting what they'd witnessed, all waiting for the chance to speak truth. Why, I asked, overwhelmed, why do you all care so much? Because medicine is supposed to first do no harm, Dr. Chen said fiercely. What your family did that day violated everything we stand for. They used our hospital as a weapon against you. We became unwitting accomplices to their abuse because they were platinum donors. That ends now. She stood moving to her computer. I'm sending all documentation to your attorney now. Every page, every note, every image, including the radiologist's report showing that Madison's hand had no actual injury, not even deep tissue bruising. She performed pain for an audience while you bled internally. There's one more thing, Janet said quietly. The EMT who brought Madison in, he quit that day, said he couldn't work in a system where money determined who got saved first. But before he left, he wrote a detailed report about your family's behavior at the scene. He's been waiting to share it with the right people. They gave me his contact information along with a list of every medical professional willing to testify. 14 names of people who'd chosen ethics over easy silence. This could damage the hospital's reputation, I pointed out, admitting they delayed critical care for a donor's preference. Some things matter more than reputation, Dr. Chen said, like ensuring this never happens to another patient. Your case is going to change policies here. It already has, actually. We've implemented new protocols preventing donor influence on triage decisions. As I prepared to leave, Maria hugged me carefully. You survived more than that accident, sweetheart. You survived a family who wanted you gone. That makes you the strongest patient I've ever treated. I left with more than medical records. I left with an army of medical professionals ready to testify to the truth. Each document in the folder wasn't just evidence, it was validation that what happened to me was real, witnessed, and wrong. In the Uber back to Pete's house, I texted Rebecca, "You need to clear your schedule. I have 14 medical professionals ready to testify plus documentation that's going to blow this case wide open." Her response was immediate. "Holy shit, how bad?" They delayed my surgery for over 2 hours for Madison's fake injury. It cost me my fertility, and they knew. "I'm calling the DA. This isn't just civil anymore. This is attempted murder." I stared out the window at the passing city, holding the weight of the medical records in my lap. Each page proof that while my family had left me bleeding in shattered glass, the people who'd saved me had been taking notes. They'd been preparing for this moment when truth could finally speak louder than donor dollars. The girl in the glass had survived, and now she had an army of healers ready to fight for justice. My family thought medical professionals were just service providers bound by policy and politics. They were about to learn that some people still believed in doing what was right no matter the cost. The medical records weren't just documentation of my injuries. They were testimony to the power of conscience over corruption, and they were about to change everything. The district attorney's office occupied the top floor of the courthouse, all marble and mahogany designed to intimidate. But sitting in the waiting area with Rebecca and our boxes of evidence, I felt oddly calm. We'd moved beyond intimidation into the realm of facts. Ms. Maxwell, Ms. Chen. The assistant led us into a conference room where 3 people waited: District Attorney Patricia Reeves, Detective Walsh from the Accident Investigation, and a woman introduced as Michelle Kraft from the Insurance Fraud Division. "Let's start with the medical records," DA Reeves said without preamble. She was exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd won election 3 times sharp, direct, and utterly focused. We spread the documents across the table. Dr. Chen's reports, Maria's incident documentation, the surgical consent forms my parents signed, acknowledging the delay. DA Reeves read in silence, her expression darkening with each page. 2 hours and 17 minutes, she said finally. They delayed life-saving surgery for over 2 hours so their other daughter could get an unnecessary scan of a non-existent injury. While telling medical staff I was attention-seeking, I added, Detective Walsh pulled out his own files. "This aligns with what we found in our investigation. The accident scene evidence shows clear signs of passenger interference. Multiple witnesses have now come forward with footage and statements." "Tell me about the insurance situation," DA Reeves directed at Michelle Kraft. Kraft opened her laptop. "It's extensive. We have the parents filing claims totaling $500,000 for emotional distress and witness trauma. Madison Maxwell has claims for $200,000 in psychological injury, plus additional claims for lost income from yoga teaching therapy costs and something called spiritual healing treatments. Meanwhile, they're trying to get power of attorney over Lorraine's $750,000 settlement," Rebecca added. "The total family take would exceed $1.3 million from an accident their younger daughter caused." "About that," Detective Walsh interjected, We've uncovered something interesting about Madison Maxwell. He pulled out a thick folder. 3 previous insurance claims during her college years. Each involved accusations of assault or harassment against authority figures. Each was settled quietly with significant payouts. The professor accusation, I said. We found that too. There were 2 others, he continued. A resident advisor, she claimed, stalked her after she was written up for noise violations. A yoga instructor, she said, touched her inappropriately after she was asked to leave a training program for missing classes. Both cases settled by insurance for around $50,000 each. She's made a career out of false victimhood, D.A. Reeves observed. It gets worse, Kraft said. We pulled her financial records as part of the fraud investigation. 2 days before the accident, she withdrew her entire savings account. The day after the accident, she opened new accounts at 3 different banks and started moving money in patterns consistent with hiding assets. She knew she'd be getting money, Rebecca said. She prepared for a windfall before the accident even happened. D.A. Reeves leaned back. Show me the notebook Elena photographed. We pulled up the images on Rebecca's tablet. Madison's handwritten plans for her trauma narrative dated before the accident. The room fell silent as they read her drafted symptoms, planned social media strategy, and book proposal outline. This is premeditation, D.A. Reeves said quietly. Not necessarily of the exact accident, but certainly of insurance fraud. She planned to create an incident for profit. What about the parents? I asked. Detective Walsh answered, We've been investigating their finances. Your father has moved over $800,000 to offshore accounts in the past 2 weeks. Your mother has been liquidating jewelry and art. They're either planning to run or preparing for asset protection before charges are filed. Speaking of charges, D.A. Reeves said, we need to discuss what we're looking at. Insurance fraud, obviously. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Filing false police reports. But the medical neglect, she turned to me. That could be attempted murder. The words hung in the air. My parents. Attempted murder. They knew delaying treatment could kill me, I said slowly. They signed consent forms acknowledging the risks. They chose Madison's fake injury anyway. And they've continued endangering your welfare, Rebecca added. Withholding prescribed medication, keeping her in inadequate living conditions during recovery, attempting involuntary commitment to silence her. We'd like to move forward with a coordinated operation, D.A. Reeves said. Criminal charges filed simultaneously with arrests will freeze assets to prevent flight. But I need to know you're prepared for this, Lorraine. Once we start, there's no going back. They left me to die for a yoga class, I said simply. I'm prepared. Michelle Kraft spoke up. There's another complication. Madison's been posting increasingly erratic content on social media. These came in this morning. She showed us screenshots from Madison's Instagram stories, wild accusations about conspiracy against her, claims that I'd hired actors to portray medical staff, a video where she sobbed about being persecuted for surviving. The final post was chilling. If something happens to me, know that my sister orchestrated everything. I have proof hidden where only the truth can find it. She's setting up an insanity defense, Rebecca said immediately, or planning something worse. We've put surveillance on all 3 of them, Detective Walsh assured us. Madison was seen purchasing camping equipment yesterday, cash transactions. Your parents have been visiting their safety deposit boxes multiple times daily. They're going to run, I said with certainty, or Madison's going to stage something to make herself the victim again. D.A. Reeves made a decision. We move tonight. Simultaneous arrests before they can execute whatever they're planning. Detective Walsh, coordinate with patrol units. Ms. Kraft, get those asset freeze orders signed immediately. What do you need from me? I asked. Stay safe and visible, she said. Go about your normal routine. Let them think they have time. We'll handle the rest. As we prepared to leave, Detective Walsh pulled me aside. There's something else. That EMT who quit. He came in yesterday. He recorded audio at the scene on his personal device. It's difficult to hear, but it includes your father coaching Madison on what to say about the accident while you were still trapped. Another nail in their coffin. Can I hear it? After the arrests, he said gently. Focus on staying safe today. By tomorrow, this will all be over. Rebecca and I left the courthouse in subdued silence. We'd set everything in motion. Years of fraud, weeks of cruelty, a lifetime of toxic dynamics, all about to culminate in handcuffs and headlines. Are you okay? Rebecca asked as she drove me back to Pete's. I keep thinking about that camping equipment, I admitted. What if Madison's planning to disappear and make it look like I hurt her? Then she's about to be very surprised by the surveillance teams watching her every move, Rebecca said firmly. This isn't their game anymore, it's the state's, and the state doesn't lose. My phone buzzed. Sarah had sent a link to a breaking news alert, prominent local family under investigation for insurance fraud. It was starting. The investigation was no longer secret. By morning, everyone would know what the Maxwell family really was. But as we pulled into Pete's driveway, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Madison's car was parked across the street, empty. She was here somewhere watching, waiting. Get inside, Rebecca said urgently, already calling Detective Walsh. Now! As I hurried to the door, I caught a glimpse of movement in the hedges. A flash of blonde hair, the glint of something metallic. Madison had come to make her final play, not knowing she was already surrounded by police. The investigation was beginning, but my sister had one last performance planned. The only question was whether the authorities would stop her before she could flip the script one final time. The girl in the glass was about to face her would-be killer. But this time, I wasn't bleeding and alone. This time, I had the law on my side. I made it inside Pete's house just as the first patrol car rounded the corner. Through the living room window, I watched Madison emerge from the hedges, her face contorting in rage when she saw the police presence. She was holding something in her hand, a canister of some kind. "Lorraine Maxwell," she screamed. "Come out and face me, you lying witch!" Detective Walsh's unmarked car screeched to a stop. He approached Madison slowly, hands visible, while other officers flanked her position. "Ms. Maxwell, put down the container." His voice carried through the window. "She's trying to destroy me," Madison wailed, holding up what I could now see was lighter fluid. "She's turned everyone against me, made them believe her lies." My phone rang. Rebecca's voice was urgent. "Stay inside. Do not engage with her. Let the police handle this." But my mother's Mercedes pulled up behind the patrol cars, followed by my father's Porsche. They'd come for the show, not knowing they were walking into their own arrests. "Madison, sweetheart, what are you doing?" My mother rushed toward her, but an officer intercepted. "Ma'am, stay back. This is an active situation." "That's my daughter," she shrieked. "Lorraine, look what you've done. You've driven your sister to this." Through the window, I could see neighbors gathering phones out, recording everything. Madison's final performance was being broadcast live across social media. "I'll tell everyone the truth," Madison shouted, dousing herself with the lighter fluid, "about how Lorraine planned everything. How she's been plotting against me since we were children. I have evidence." Madison put the lighter down. Detective Walsh commanded his hand, moving to his radio. "We need backup, possible 5150 situation." But Madison wasn't done. She was always jealous, always trying to steal my light, and when that wasn't enough, she tried to kill me. "You grabbed the wheel," I said aloud, though only Pete and Sarah, who'd joined me at the window, could hear. "You caused the accident." My father tried to push past the police line. "This is ridiculous. My daughter is having a mental health crisis because of the harassment she's endured. I demand you arrest Lorraine for driving Madison to this." Detective Walsh turned to him. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back. And actually, we do have warrants. Officers—" The look of shock on my father's face as handcuffs clicked around his wrists was something I'd remember forever. "What are you doing? Do you know who I am?" "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, medical neglect, and attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult." the officer recited. My mother's scream pierced the air. "You can't arrest us. We're the victims here. Madison, tell them." But Madison was spiraling, waving a lighter now. "I'll show everyone what she is, a monster who destroys everything good and pure." Sarah grabbed my arm. "She's going to hurt herself and blame you." "No," I said with sudden clarity. "She's not. Watch." Because I knew my sister. This was theater, not desperation. The lighter fluid was probably water. The lighter likely wouldn't work. This was her ultimate victim performance, and she needed to survive it to reap the benefits. Madison Maxwell. Detective Walsh announced, "You're under arrest for insurance fraud, filing false police reports, and reckless endangerment." "I'm covered in lighter fluid," she screamed. "No," one of the officers said, sniffing. "That's water with something added for smell, probably vanilla extract." The game was up. Madison's face transformed from tragic victim to cornered animal. She threw the container at the nearest officer and tried to run, but her yoga flexibility was no match for police training. They had her on the ground and cuffed within seconds. "This is police brutality," she screamed. "I'm injured from the accident. My hand—" "The hand that medical records show had no actual injury," Detective Walsh asked dryly. My parents were being led to separate patrol cars, my mother still shrieking about lawyers and lawsuits. My father maintained stony silence, probably calculating which offshore accounts might still be accessible. Then Madison played her final card. "Check my Instagram. I posted evidence Lorraine's been stalking me, planning to hurt me. It's all there." Detective Walsh actually laughed. "You mean the posts our cybercrimes unit has been monitoring, the ones where you document your own fraud planning? Those posts—" I stepped onto the porch, then unable to stay hidden any longer. Madison's eyes locked onto mine, and for just a moment the mask slipped completely. I saw the real person underneath, not the victim, not the golden child, but someone empty and angry who'd rather destroy than admit fault. "You—" she hissed. "This is all your fault. I was supposed to be famous. My book was going to be a bestseller. I was going to have a TED Talk about survival. You ruined everything." "No, Madison," I said calmly. "You ruined everything the moment you grabbed that wheel, and then you kept ruining it with every lie, every performance, every attempt to profit from pain you caused." "I hate you," she screamed as they loaded her into the patrol car. "I've always hated you. Mom and Dad only loved me because I made them look good. You were just the spare they had to tolerate." The words should have hurt, but they didn't, because she was finally telling the truth. Our entire family dynamic laid bare in front of dozens of witnesses and cameras. DeReeves arrived as they were clearing the scene. "Are you all right?" she asked me. "I'm free," I said, and realized it was true. For the first time in my life, I'm free. "We'll need you to come in tomorrow for formal statements. But tonight, rest. You've been through enough." As the patrol cars pulled away with my family inside, neighbors approached. Some offered hugs, others apologies for not seeing the truth sooner. Mrs. Patterson from 2 houses down pressed a casserole into my hands. "I saw them leave you at that accident," she said quietly. "I was too shocked to process it then, but I saw. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." "You're speaking up now," I told her. "That's what matters." Inside, Pete opened a bottle of wine while Sarah pulled up the news coverage. The arrest was already trending, Madison's fake lighter fluid stunt, playing on repeat. But the comments were different than during her victim era. People saw through the performance now. "Look at this." Sarah showed me her phone. Charlotte posted the full video from inside the building. Over 1 million views already. The yoga community is calling for refunds of their donations to Madison's fund. "What happens now?" Pete asked. "Now we let justice take its course," I said. "There'll be a rain tomorrow. Bail will be set high because of the offshore accounts. And then you rebuild," Sarah finished, "without them." That night, I slept without nightmares for the first time since the accident. My family was in jail, their crimes exposed their power over me, finally broken. The confrontation I'd dreaded had ended not with my destruction, but theirs. Madison had promised to reveal the truth in her final performance. She had just not the truth she intended. She'd shown the world exactly who the Maxwell family really was, fraudsters, liars, and abusers who'd sacrificed their own daughter for money and image. The girl in the glass had survived their worst. Now she could finally begin to heal. The courthouse steps were swarming with media when I arrived for the arraignment. Rebecca guided me through the crowd, deflecting questions with practiced ease. Inside the gallery was packed with neighbors, former friends of my family, and what looked like half of Madison's yoga community. All rise for the Honorable Judge Catherine Winters. Judge Winters was known for her no-nonsense approach to white-collar crime. As my family was led in wearing orange jumpsuits, I hardly recognized them. My mother's perfect makeup was gone. My father's commanding presence diminished, and Madison looked almost ordinary without her designer athletic wear. "We'll hear the charges against the defendants," Judge Winters announced. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, the state charges David Maxwell with conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, medical neglect resulting in permanent injury, attempted financial exploitation, and money laundering. Patricia Maxwell faces identical charges plus obstruction of justice. Madison Maxwell is charged with insurance fraud, filing false police reports, causing serious bodily injury through reckless conduct, and attempted witness intimidation." Each charge was like a hammer blow. My family sat rigid, their court-appointed attorneys beside them. They'd refused private counsel, probably to preserve what assets they could. How did the defendants plead? One by one, they entered not guilty pleas. Madison actually smirked as she said it, still convinced she could perform her way out of this. "The matter of bail," Judge Winters continued. "Prosecution. Given the defendants' access to offshore accounts totaling over $1.2 million and their demonstrated willingness to flee, we request remand without bail." My mother gasped audibly. My father's attorney stood quickly. "Your Honor, my clients are pillars of the community with strong ties." "Pillars don't usually launder money through Caribbean banks," Judge Winters interrupted. "I've reviewed the evidence. It's substantial. However, I'll set bail at $500,000 each cash only with passport surrender and ankle monitoring." They didn't have that much liquid cash available, not with their accounts frozen. They were staying in jail. As they were led out, Madison turned to stare at me. "This isn't over," she mouthed. But it was. The real unraveling began that afternoon. Rebecca's office phone rang constantly as the full scope of the investigation emerged. The insurance companies weren't just pursuing fraud charges, they were seeking full restitution plus damages. The IRS had joined the investigation, finding years of tax irregularities in my father's business dealings. The state licensing board was reviewing Madison's yoga teaching certification based on her history of false claims. "It's dominoes," Rebecca explained. "Each agency finds something that triggers another investigation. Your family didn't just commit fraud around the accident. They've been operating like this for years." Charlotte arrived at the office with a banker's box. "Madison's former roommates contacted me. They've been saving things, documents she thought she'd destroyed." Inside were credit card applications in other people's names, forged recommendation letters, even a diary detailing how she'd practiced injury symptoms before previous insurance claims. "She's a serial fraudster," I said, stunned by the scope. "Who learned from the best," Charlotte replied. "Your parents have been teaching her this was acceptable since college. Every time they covered for her paid off, her victims made problems disappear. They reinforced that consequences didn't apply to Maxwell's." My phone buzzed. Elena texted, "Miss Lorraine, reporters at the house. Found something in walls during renovation. Police here now." "What did they find?" I texted back. "Cash. Lots of cash, hidden in bathroom walls." Another domino fell. Hiding large amounts of cash in home renovations was classic money laundering. My parents had been preparing for this possibility for years. That evening, the news coverage was relentless. Prominent families' web of lies unravels led every local broadcast. They played Charlotte's video, showed my medical records with personal details, redacted interviewed neighbors who'd witnessed my family's behavior. But the most damaging interview was with someone unexpected, Madison's ex-boyfriend from college, Tyler Morrison. "She destroyed my life," he said on camera. "When I tried to break up with her, she accused me of assault. I lost my scholarship, my friends, everything. Her parents paid my family $50,000 to keep quiet and not press countercharges. I've been waiting years for the truth to come out." Another victim, another payoff, another crime. How many others, I asked Rebecca. How many people did they destroy to protect Madison's image? "We're about to find out," she said. "This interview will bring them forward." She was right. By the next morning, Rebecca's office had received calls from a dozen people with similar stories. Teaching assistants Madison had accused when caught cheating. Employers she'd filed claims against after being fired. Even a high school teammate she'd injured during practice, then claimed had attacked her. "She's a predator," Rebecca said after the fifth call. "She targets people with less power, destroys their lives, then profits from it." The forensic accountants found more hidden assets: cryptocurrency accounts, gold coins in safety deposit boxes, property in other states under shell companies. The total exceeded $3 million, all accumulated through various frauds over the years. "Your parents were building an empire on lies," the lead investigator told me. "The accident fraud was just their latest scheme. If it had worked, they'd have added another $1 million to their coffers." But the most shocking revelation came from Madison's jail calls, which were recorded and subpoenaed. In a conversation with a yoga friend who still believed her, she laid out her entire philosophy. "People are so stupid." Madison laughed on the recording. "Show them tears, play the victim, and they throw money at you. I figured it out in college. Why work when you can just suffer dramatically? Lorraine was supposed to die in that crash. Would have been perfect. Grieving sister book deal, speaking tours. I'd have made millions off her corpse." The friend audibly gasped. "Madison, that's horrible." "It's business," Madison replied coldly. "She was worth more dead than alive. Still is, honestly." Rebecca played the recording 3 times, each playback making my blood chill further. "She just confessed to attempted murder. She wanted you dead for profit." The recording went viral within hours. Madison's remaining supporters vanished. The yoga studio officially banned her for life. Publishers who'd expressed interest in her memoir issued statements distancing themselves. Her Instagram account was suspended for violating terms of service. "She's finished," Charlotte said when we met for coffee. "Even if she somehow beats the criminal charges, she's socially and professionally destroyed." But Madison wasn't done. From her jail cell, she orchestrated one final manipulation. She claimed to be pregnant, demanding special treatment and medical care. The media went wild with the story of the pregnant prisoner being persecuted by her sister. It took exactly 2 days for the jail medical staff to confirm she was lying. No pregnancy, just another performance. But those 2 days showed me something important: some people would always believe the loudest victim, regardless of evidence. "Let them," Rebecca advised. "Focus on the truth, not the noise." The investigation continued expanding. The FBI joined when interstate fraud was discovered. The Department of Labor investigated my father's company for wage theft. Even the zoning board found violations in my parents' home renovations. "It's biblical," Pete observed one evening. "They built their house on sand, and now the flood has come." Each revelation brought mixed feelings. Vindication, yes, but also sadness for the family I'd never really had. They'd been criminals long before they left me in that glass. I'd just been too well trained to see it. "You couldn't have known," Dr. Chen told me during a follow-up appointment. "Children don't suspect their parents of being con artists. You trusted because that's what children do." The final blow came when Madison turned on our parents, offering to testify against them for a reduced sentence. My father responded by revealing Madison's previous frauds in detail, throwing his golden child under the bus to save himself. My mother declared them both dead to her and refused to speak to anyone. The family that had stood united in cruelty now tore each other apart in custody. Their unraveling was complete, messy, and utterly predictable. When you build relationships on lies and manipulation, this is how they end. As I watched the news coverage of their complete destruction, I felt something unexpected: peace. They'd made their choices year after year, crime after crime. The unraveling wasn't my fault. It was the inevitable consequence of their own actions. The girl in the glass hadn't destroyed them. They'd destroyed themselves. I just survived long enough to witness it. 6 months after the arrests, the criminal trial began. The courthouse had become familiar territory, but walking in as the star witness rather than a spectator changed everything. Rebecca had prepared me extensively, but nothing could fully ready me for facing my family in court. The prosecution had decided to try them together, arguing their crimes were too interconnected to separate. My family sat at the defense table like strangers. My father had lost weight, his expensive suit replaced by an ill-fitting court-provided one. My mother stared straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge anyone. Madison had attempted to maintain her image, but jail had worn away her polish. The state calls Lorraine Maxwell. Every eye in the packed courtroom followed me to the witness stand. I'd chosen my outfit carefully professional but not severe, the visible scars on my hands uncovered. Let them see what their choices had wrought. Ms. Maxwell, the prosecutor began, please tell the court about the morning of October 15th. I spoke clearly, detailing the birthday brunch plans, the careful driving, Madison's increasing agitation about her yoga class. When I reached the moment Madison grabbed the wheel, her attorney objected. Speculation, Your Honor. My client denies this allegation. I'll allow it, Judge Winters ruled. Continue, Ms. Maxwell. I described the crash, the pain, the glass. But the hardest part was recounting my family's reaction. My voice trembled as I told the court about my mother's concern for Madison's yoga schedule while I bled, about my father caring more about his Mercedes than my life, about Madison stepping over my blood. Objection, Madison's attorney called out. Prejudicial. Overruled, the witness is describing what she experienced. The prosecutor introduced the medical records. Dr. Chen had already testified about the delay in treatment, but seeing the documentation on the courtroom screens made several jury members gasp. 2 hours and 17 minutes. The timestamp showed clearly when I arrived versus when surgery began. What were the consequences of this delay? The prosecutor asked. I had to pause, gathering strength. Beyond the additional pain and blood loss, the delay caused complications. Permanent scarring, obviously. Nerve damage in my left hand that affects my work. And I forced myself to continue. Damage to my reproductive system, that means I'll likely never have children. My mother made a sound quickly stifled. I looked at her for the first time. She wasn't crying for my loss. She was angry about the sympathy shifting to me. Tell us about your recovery, the prosecutor continued. I detailed the basement room, the withheld medication, the forced servitude at Madison's party. Each revelation painted a picture of systematic neglect and cruelty that went far beyond a single bad decision. The defense's cross-examination was brutal. My father's attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, jealous, mentally unstable, but Rebecca had prepared me well. Isn't it true you've always resented your sister's success? He pressed. I've never resented success earned honestly, I replied calmly. I resent fraud, lies, and attempted murder disguised as achievement. Madison's attorney took a different approach, trying to create doubt about the wheel grabbing. You were in shock, weren't you? Traumatized. How can you be certain of what happened? Because Charlotte Williams has video showing exactly what happened, I said. Because multiple witnesses saw it. Because your client confessed to planning it in her journal and on recorded jail calls. Objection. Sustained. The jury will disregard the mention of jail calls. But the damage was done. They'd heard it. My mother's attorney barely questioned me, sensing perhaps that anything he asked would only make things worse. When I stepped down after 4 hours of testimony, I was exhausted, but unbroken. The prosecution's case unfolded like a symphony. Charlotte testified about the video, playing it for the jury in slow motion. You could see Madison's hand reach across, grab the wheel, jerk it toward the exit. The truck entering frame, the inevitable collision. The EMT who'd quit testified about my family's behavior at the scene, playing his audio recording. My father's voice coaching Madison to claim I'd been texting while I lay trapped and bleeding. Several jurors looked disgusted. Dr. Chen and her team of medical professionals testified about the treatment delay. The radiologist showed Madison's scans, pointing out the complete absence of injury. Maria described my parents' demands to prioritize their uninjured daughter, while I coded on the table. "We almost lost her twice," Maria said, wiping away tears, while her parents worried about yoga class. The forensic accountant laid out the fraud in devastating detail, charts showing money movement insurance claims, offshore accounts. The prosecution presented Madison's notebook, each page blown up on screens, showing her pre-accident planning. The defendant didn't just commit fraud, the prosecutor argued. She planned to create a victim narrative for profit, and when her sister survived, she and her parents tried to destroy her to protect their scheme. Tyler Morrison testified about Madison's false assault claim in college. 2 other victims followed, each describing how Madison had destroyed their lives with false accusations, always with her parents' help, and money cleaning up after her. But the most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source, James Morrison, my parents' former attorney. He'd been granted immunity in exchange for his cooperation. "They asked me to prepare documents that would have given them complete control over Lorraine's medical and financial decisions," he testified. "The goal was to have her declared incompetent, institutionalized if necessary, and gain control of her settlement." "Did they express any concern for her welfare?" the prosecutor asked. "No, they referred to her as the problem and discussed whether it might be cleaner if she didn't survive her injuries." The defense's case was weak. They called character witnesses who wilted under cross-examination, admitting they'd never seen the family interact privately. Madison took the stand against her attorney's advice, unable to resist the spotlight. "I'm the real victim here," she insisted. "Lorraine has always been jealous of me. This is all an elaborate revenge plot." "So you didn't grab the wheel?" the prosecutor asked. "Maybe I tried to help steer when I saw danger," Madison admitted, "but only to save us." "You saw the truck before the collision." Madison realized her mistake too late. No, I meant... "So you grabbed the wheel before any danger was visible, causing the car to enter the intersection at the wrong angle." "That's not what happened." The prosecutor played her jail call confession. Madison's voice filled the courtroom. "Lorraine was supposed to die in that crash. Would have been perfect." "Still claim you're the victim?" the prosecutor asked. Madison broke down, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage at being exposed. "She ruined everything, my book deal, my influence, my future. I wish she had died." Even her own attorney looked horrified. The jury stared at her with undisguised revulsion. My parents didn't testify. Their attorneys made weak closing arguments about family dysfunction and miscommunication. Madison's attorney tried to claim mental illness despite no supporting diagnosis. The prosecution's closing was devastating. This family left their daughter bleeding in glass because her sister was late for yoga. When she survived, they tried to steal her settlement, destroy her credibility, and ultimately wished for her death. This isn't dysfunction. It's evil, and evil must face consequences. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. As they filed back in, Madison grabbed her attorney's arm. "They can't convict me. I'm the victim. We, the jury, find David Maxwell guilty on all counts. Patricia Maxwell guilty on all counts. Madison Maxwell guilty on all counts." The word guilty echoed through the courtroom with each charge. 27 times for my father, 25 for my mother, 31 for Madison, including attempted murder. Madison screamed, lunging toward me before bailiffs restrained her. "You destroyed us, you jealous, pathetic nothing. I hope you die alone." My parents said nothing, finally understanding that their golden child had been their downfall all along. Judge Winters scheduled sentencing for the following month, but the victory was complete. They'd been exposed, convicted, and would face years in prison. The insurance companies would recover their fraudulent payouts. The victims would have justice. As I left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions, but I only had one statement. The truth won. That's all that matters. Rebecca drove me home, both of us processing the magnitude of what had just happened. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said, and meant it. They have no power over me anymore. That night, I had dinner with my chosen family, Pete, Sarah, Charlotte. Even Dr. Chen and Maria joined us. We didn't celebrate their conviction that felt wrong. Instead, we celebrated survival, truth, and the bonds formed through crisis. To the girl in the glass, Pete raised his wine, who refused to let them bury her. To the people who pulled me from the wreckage, I countered, all of you. The courtroom victory was more than legal vindication. It was proof that truth supported by evidence and courage could triumph over lies backed by money and manipulation. My family had built their kingdom on fraud and cruelty. Now they'd watch it crumble from behind bars. The girl they'd left bleeding had become the woman who brought justice, and that was the greatest victory of all. 1 year after the verdict, I stood in the conference room of the Shattered Glass Foundation, watching as our newest grant recipient tearfully thanked our board. She was a young mother whose family had tried to steal her injury settlement after a workplace accident. We'd provided legal funding and support that changed her life. "You gave me hope when I had none," she said, clutching the check that would cover her legal fees. "Thank you for believing me when my own family didn't." I understood her gratitude intimately. After my family's sentencing, my father to 12 years, my mother to 10, and Madison to 15, with possibility of parole in 8, I'd used my settlement to create something meaningful from the wreckage. The foundation supported victims of family fraud and medical neglect, providing legal resources, counseling, and emergency funding. In our first year, we'd helped 47 people escape situations similar to mine. Each success story healed something in me that my family had broken. "The next grant presentation is in an hour," Charlotte said, handing me a file. She'd become our program director after leaving the yoga world entirely. It's Maria's scholarship candidate. Maria, my former nurse, was pursuing her degree in patient advocacy with our support. She'd recruited several medical professionals to our cause, creating a network that identified and assisted vulnerable patients whose families prioritized money over care. I retreated to my office, still amazed I had one. The walls displayed thank you letters from grant recipients, photos from our fundraising galas, and news clippings about our work. But the most meaningful item was a small framed note from Dr. Chen. "From shattered glass comes the strongest foundations." My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Now our legal advisor, Madison's parole hearing scheduled for next month. Are you planning to attend?" I'd thought about this moment often. Madison had served only 3 years of her sentence, her time reduced for good behavior and prison overcrowding. The idea of her walking free still sent anxiety through me, but not fear. Never again fear. "I'll provide a written statement," I replied. "I won't give her the satisfaction of seeing me." Through the victim notification system, I knew my parents' situations. My father had been transferred to minimum security after an assault by another inmate who'd lost his daughter to a drunk driver and didn't appreciate my father's lack of remorse. My mother had found religion sending me monthly letters begging forgiveness that I recycled unopened. But it was Madison who still tried to control the narrative. She'd started a prison blog about being a survivor of family betrayal, painting herself as the misunderstood daughter who'd made one mistake. She never mentioned grabbing the wheel or wishing me dead. A knock interrupted my thoughts. Sarah entered with a smile and a coffee. "Ready for the interview?" National Public Radio was doing a feature on the foundation. They wanted to understand how someone could transform such profound betrayal into purpose. I'd struggled with whether to participate, but our publicist convinced me that sharing my story could help others recognize similar situations. The reporter arrived promptly, her manner professional but warm. We sat in the Foundation's library, surrounded by resources we provided to families navigating fraud and abuse. "Your story has resonated with millions," she began. "What do you think touches people so deeply?" "I think we all fear being betrayed by those who should protect us," I said carefully. "When it happens, you feel uniquely alone, but you're not. That's what the Foundation proves, that survivors exist, that healing is possible, that chosen family can be stronger than blood." "You've built quite a chosen family," she observed. "Can you tell me about that?" I smiled, thinking of Pete and Sarah, whose spare room had become my sanctuary, of Charlotte, who'd risked her career to expose the truth, of medical professionals who'd chosen ethics over easy silence, of Rebecca, who'd fought like a warrior for justice. "They showed me what family really means," I said. "It's not about shared DNA or obligations. It's about showing up when someone's bleeding in glass. It's about fighting for truth even when it's costly. It's about love that doesn't come with price tags or conditions." "Speaking of family, Madison is up for parole soon. How do you feel about that?" I'd prepared for this question. She's served her minimum sentence. The system will decide if that's enough. My focus is on the future, not the past. "Very diplomatic," the reporter noted. "But surely you have feelings about it." "Of course, but my feelings don't define me anymore. My work does. Every person we help, every life we improve, that's my response to what happened. Living well, helping others, building something beautiful from something horrible." The interview continued for another hour, covering the Foundation's programs, future plans, and the upcoming gala that had already sold out. When it ended, I felt drained, but satisfied. That evening, our monthly survivor support group met in the Foundation's main hall. 23 people at various stages of their journeys gathered to share stories, offer support, and remind each other that they weren't alone. I finally went no contact with my mother, one woman shared. "She's still telling everyone I'm mentally ill for reporting her fraud, but I don't care anymore. I'm free." "My brother got arrested last week," a young man added. 5 years of stealing my disability payments finally over. This group gave me the courage to press charges. I listened more than I spoke, marveling at their strength. Each person here had been betrayed by family, had suffered not just physical or financial harm, but the deep wound of discovering that those who should love them most saw them as opportunities for profit. Lorraine, an older gentleman, said, "What helped you most in the early days, when everything felt impossible?" Honestly, anger, I admitted. Not the destructive kind, but the righteous fury that said I deserved better, that what happened to me was wrong. That anger gave me energy to fight when nothing else could. "And now?" he asked. "Now I have purpose." The anger transformed into determination to ensure no one else faces this alone. It's still there, that fire, but it builds instead of burns. After the meeting, I walked to my car, a modest Honda that I'd bought with my own earnings, not settlement money. The November air was crisp, similar to that October morning when everything changed. But instead of dread, I felt gratitude. My phone lit up with messages. Grant recipients sharing progress updates, board members discussing expansion plans, a text from a reporter asking for comment on Madison's parole hearing. I ignored the last one, focusing instead on the ones that mattered. As I drove home to the apartment, I shared with 2 rescue dogs, both survivors of neglect, who understood second chances. I thought about the journey from that shattered intersection to here. The physical scars remained my limp, more pronounced on cold days, my left hand never quite steady. The emotional scars ran deeper, but had become part of my story rather than my limitation. The Foundation's next project was ambitious, a residential facility for people escaping family fraud who needed safe housing during legal proceedings. We'd already secured the property, a beautiful Victorian, that would house 8 residents at a time. I'd insisted on one feature: no basement rooms. Every resident would have windows, natural light, and dignity. That night, I attended a fundraising dinner for the local hospital. Dr. Chen had invited me to speak about the importance of medical professionals maintaining ethical standards despite pressure. The same hospital where my family's money had once influenced my care now used my story in their training programs. Lorraine Maxwell reminds us why we took our oaths. The chief of staff said in his introduction, "Her case changed how we operate. Donor status no longer influences triage decisions, ever." I spoke briefly about the medical professionals who'd saved more than my life. They'd saved my faith in humanity. The audience, mostly doctors and hospital administrators, gave a standing ovation that felt like another form of healing. Later at home with my dogs curled beside me, I opened my laptop to work on the Foundation's annual report. The numbers were staggering: 2.3 million in grants, distributed 78 legal victories, countless lives changed. But what mattered more were the stories behind those numbers. A notification popped up: Madison Maxwell parole hearing scheduled. I closed it without reading further. She could have her hearing, maybe even her freedom, but she'd never again have power over me. That girl who bled in glass while her sister stepped over her for yoga was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd transformed trauma into purpose, betrayal into advocacy, and shattered glass into the strongest foundation. My phone buzzed with one final message of the day. A young woman we'd helped 6 months ago had just won her case against her parents, who'd stolen her identity and ruined her credit. "I got justice because of you," she wrote. "Thank you for showing me it was possible." I smiled, thinking of how my family had thought they were burying me in that basement. Instead, they'd planted a seed that grew into something they never expected: hope for others facing the same darkness. The Foundation's motto, etched in glass at our entrance, came from something Dr. Chen had said during my darkest days: "What breaks us can also build us if we choose to use the pieces wisely." I'd chosen wisely, and tomorrow I'd help others do the same. The story that began with betrayal and blood had become one of purpose and power. Not power over others like my family had craved, but power to lift others from their own wreckage. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life that mattered. As I headed to bed, I paused at my window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, someone was trapped in their own shattered glass, believing they were alone. Tomorrow we'd find them. We'd pull them free. We'd show them that survival was just the beginning. Because that's what we do at the Shattered Glass Foundation. We take the broken pieces of lives destroyed by those who should have protected them, and we help build something new, something stronger, something beautiful. My family left me bleeding in glass for a yoga class. They thought they were ending my story. They were actually writing the first chapter of something much bigger than all of us. And that's the greatest victory of all, not just surviving their cruelty, but transforming it into compassion for others. They tried to break me. Instead, they forged me into someone unbreakable. The girl in the glass didn't just heal, she became a healer. And that's a transformation my family, in all their scheming and cruelty, never saw coming. Dear viewers, if you've made it this far, thank you for joining me on this journey. Have you or someone you know ever faced betrayal from those who should have protected you? How did you find the strength to rebuild? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be the hope someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of survival and triumph. And remember, you're never alone in your struggles. Share this with someone who needs to know that broken doesn't mean defeated. Until next time, keep choosing to build something beautiful from your broken pieces. You are stronger than you know.